Chapter 623. Inside the monarch mansion, Yun Yao's cave, Yun Yao's palace. In the cold and elegant study room, Yun Yao was sitting in front of a table, holding an ancient book and reading it. At this moment, there was a knock on the door of the study room, followed by a clear and melodious female voice. "Big Sister Yun." Yun Yao put down the ancient book in her hand, looked up at the door and said, "Come in." The door opened and a beautiful woman in a green dress walked into the study room and stood in front of the table. This pure and beautiful woman was Lan Huixin. She bowed to Yun Yao and asked with a smile on her face, "Sister Yun, what instructions do you have for me to come here?" Yun Yao nodded and motioned for her to sit down and talk. She said calmly, "Huixin, the storm of the consort selection has passed and you have stayed in the central province for 3 months. There are many rules in the monarch mansion, so it's not suitable for you to continue staying by my side. Firstly, it's inconvenient for you to move around, and secondly, it will delay your cultivation." Hearing Yun Yao's words, the smile on Lan Huixin's face suddenly froze, and then it turned into a deep sense of loss and sadness. Her clear eyes were covered with a layer of mist, and she said with a voice full of grievance, "Big Sister Yun, are you driving me away?" Yun Yao slightly frowned and shook her head gently. "Huixin, you are the proud daughter of heaven in the Long Sky region. You have your own life and future, so why are you so insistent on staying by my side? Don't worry, I will send Yun Luo to personally escort you back to the Long Sky region." The storm of the consort selection had not passed yet, so it was indeed dangerous for Lan Huixin to return to the Long Sky region alone. Now that 3 months had passed, the storm of that matter had subsided, and the people had gradually forgotten about Lan Huixin. Moreover, with Yun Luo, a heaven origin expert, escorting Lan Huixin, she would definitely be able to return to the Long Sky region safely. Yun Yao had taken Lan Huixin in for 3 months and sent Yun Luo to escort her back, which was already extremely benevolent. However, Lan Huixin finally managed to stay by Yun Yao's side and followed her into the emperor's mansion. How could she be willing to leave just like that? She put on a pitiful look, and tears welled up in her eyes. She immediately knelt in front of Yun Yao, sobbing and begging. "Big Sister Yun, Xueqi is now a homeless person. If she leaves your side, I really don't know where to go. Big Sister Yun, please don't chase me away. I just want to find a place to settle down and live a peaceful life. As long as I can stay by your side, I am willing to be your servant and serve you." Lan Huixin cried like a pear blossom in the rain. As she spoke, she kowtowed and saluted. Her expression was extremely mournful. Yun Yao couldn't bear to see her like this. She sighed and said, "Sigh. You're a genius. Why do you have to do this?" However, Lan Huixin shook her head repeatedly and said, "Big Sister Yun, with Xueqi's aptitude and status, I can be considered noble in the secular world. However, in the land of Central Province, what does it count for? Xueqi comes from a humble background and has mediocre aptitude. It's Xueqi's honor to be your servant. I only hope that Big Sister Yun won't chase me away." Lan Huixin knelt down and kowtowed again, begging bitterly with tears flowing down her face. She had already done this much. Yun Yao wasn't a cold-hearted person. How could she still refuse her? Say. She sighed deeply and helplessly. She reached out to help Lan Huixin up and said, "Since you're determined not to leave, then stay. Later, I'll ask Yun Luo to arrange a position for you. You'll stay in Yun Yao's palace as an attendant. However, this is the emperor's mansion. You don't have to follow me at all times. Stay in Yun Yao's palace and don't wander around casually." Yun Yao warned her in a solemn tone. Only then did Lan Huixin stop crying and smile. She quickly wiped the tears off her pretty face and nodded repeatedly in agreement. "Big Sister Yun, please don't worry. Xueqi knows the rules. I won't cause you any trouble." Yun Yao nodded and said, "Okay, I still have something to do and have to go out. Go find Yun Luo. I'll ask her to make the arrangements." After sending Lan Huixin away, Yun Yao left the cave and rode the spirit crane to the mountains in the southwest. An hour later, the spirit crane landed outside the gate of Tianqing Palace. Yun Yao put away the spirit crane and walked toward the gate. When the guard saw her, he quickly bowed and opened the gate in the defensive array, leading her into the palace. A moment later, she entered Ji Tianqing's study and sat down to wait while the guard went to report the news. Yun Yao waited quietly for a moment. Ji Tianxing rushed over after hearing the news and walked into the study. Yao Yao, I just came back. How did you get the news so quickly? Yun Yao looked at him with a gentle gaze and nodded slightly. I came to find you a few days ago. At that time, you hadn't come back yet, so I sent people to keep an eye on you. When you returned to the Monarch Palace, there was such a big commotion and lineup. Of course, I got the news immediately. Ji Tianxing smiled and sat down beside her. I was just about to go into seclusion to cultivate when you came to find me. Is there something important? Yun Yao frowned and thought for a moment. She said with a complicated tone, it's important, but it's also not very important. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked with interest, what is it? Yun Yao said with a calm expression, previously, the little spirit bird brought me a message from Cloud Soul Palace. Half a month ago, my father came out of seclusion. He already knows about the two of us and everything that has happened in the past few months. My father wants to see you, so he wants to invite you to Cloud Soul Palace for a banquet. This is my father's wish. You can think about it on your own. You don't have to go. Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment. The corner of his mouth hooked up in a smile. He said with a playful tone, oh? My future father-in-law wants to see me. How can I not go? Yun Yao looked at him and hesitated for a moment before asking, Tianxing, are you serious? Of course. Ji Tianxing nodded without hesitation. He said seriously, just like how I am serious about you. Yun Yao's expression didn't change, but a trace of shyness flashed through her eyes. She turned her head slightly, not daring to look directly into Ji Tianxing's deep eyes. She nodded and said, if that's the case, then after you've made your preparations, we'll leave. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, all right. Wait a moment. I'll go make some preparations. He then left the study to make the necessary preparations. An hour later, he changed into a more formal set of robes and prepared a gift. The two of them left the imperial residence together. They rode on Qianyu and rushed to Cloud Soul Palace as fast as lightning. Zhongzhou City was located in the center of the Zhongzhou continent. Cloud Soul Palace was located in the south of the Zhongzhou continent. The distance between the two places was very far. Even if Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao rushed at full speed, they would still need to fly for 3 days. During the journey, Yun Yao was a little nervous. She explained her father's situation and personality to Ji Tianxing in advance. Chapter 624. After listening to Yun Yao's introduction, Ji Tianxing finally understood her father's situation. Yun Yao's father, Yun Zhongqi, was the current head of Cloud Soul Palace. He was a famous soul refinement realm elite. He was dignified, resolute, and had great foresight. He was extremely shrewd and cunning. Yun Zhongqi usually kept a low profile and would not easily reveal his true strength and methods. However, the fact that the Yun family could survive for so many years under the combined suppression of the two great families without suffering any substantial damage showed Yun Zhongqi's methods and strategies. Yun Yao was worried that her parents would still look down on Ji Tianxing. Even though Ji Tianxing was known as the #1 genius of the human race and had become the Tianquan region lord. However, compared to the ancient Cloud Soul Palace, he was still insignificant. In order to take care of her feelings, Ji Tianxing had to silently endure even if he was looked down on and humiliated. This was the result that Yun Yao did not want to see the most. She would rather Ji Tianxing not attend the banquet at Cloud Soul Palace than let him be humiliated. However, Ji Tianxing remained calm and indifferent, as if he was not worried at all. Of course, this was one of the things that Yun Yao admired about Ji Tianxing the most. No matter when, he was always so calm, composed, indifferent, and unfazed by honor or disgrace. Ji Tianxing's calmness made Yun Yao's worries dissipate. Unknowingly, 3 days passed. On the evening of the 4th day, when the sun was setting in the west, the two of them finally arrived at Cloud Soul Palace. Qianyu flew high in the sky above the sea of clouds. He could only see the boundless sea of clouds, which was dimly lit by the setting sun. It was like a fairyland. In the depths of the sea of clouds ahead, a dark green mountain peak could be vaguely seen. At the peak of the mountain peak, which was hundreds of miles in radius, stood a magnificent, holy and majestic palace. This majestic palace was the famous Cloud Soul Palace. The golden setting sun shone on the layers upon layers of lofty palaces, refracting thousands of rays of light, making them appear like the palaces of immortals. A moment later, Qianyu flew to the top of the mountain and landed on the huge square outside Cloud Spirit Palace. The golden bricks on the ground shone brightly, and several ancient and majestic statues stood on both sides of the square. At the end of the square, there was a wide jade staircase. 200 guards in silver armor stood on both sides of the staircase, giving off a solemn and dignified aura. Ji Tianxing put away Qianyu and stood side by side with Yunyao on the square. He raised his head and looked at the gate of Cloud Soul Palace. Cloud Spirit Palace, I'm here again. Ji Tianxing's mood was somewhat complicated as he muttered in his heart. When he left Cloud Spirit Palace, he had said that he would return. Now, after a few months, he had returned to Cloud Spirit Palace. However, back then he had no status to speak of. Compared to the mighty Yun family, he was like a weed on the side of the road. Now, his name had spread throughout the Central Plains. As the #1 genius of the human race, he had become the territory lord of the Tianshan region. He had joined the ranks of the most honorable people of the human race. Comparing the two, how could one not sigh with emotion? Yunyao turned her head and looked at him from the side. She said in a gentle voice, "Let's go in." Ji Tianxing nodded. The two of them walked side by side across the square and up the jade staircase to the gate of Cloud Spirit Palace. The guards in silver armor on both sides of the staircase immediately knelt down on one knee to pay their respects. "Greetings, young mistress." At the same time, the guards at the gate of the palace quickly entered Cloud Spirit Palace to report the news. Ji Tianxing and Yunyao walked through the staircase and the gate. They entered Cloud Spirit Palace, passed through many corridors and courtyards, and walked towards Cloud Spirit Palace. Along the way, all the servants, guards, and maidservants would immediately bow and greet them respectfully when they saw them. When the two of them were far away, the servants, guards, and maidservants began to discuss in low voices. "Young mistress is back. Could the young master beside young mistress be the future son-in-law of the Yun family? I heard that the young master's name is Ji Tianxing. He is the #1 genius of the human race. He became the territory lord of the Tianshan region not long ago." "Wah! He is the Prince Tianxing who defeated the emperor and became the territory lord at the age of 18? Yes, it's him." In the past few months, Prince Tianxing's name has spread throughout the Central Plains. It can be said that he is a household name. Although the emperor did not choose young mistress as his heavenly consort, young mistress was able to find such a good match. She is also a peerless genius. Ji Tianxing was now a famous person in the Central Plains. Even the demon race and the aquatics were discussing his deeds. How could Cloud Spirit Palace not know about it? Many maidservants and attendants were discussing Ji Tianxing's deeds. They were all full of admiration. However, no one knew that the peerless genius in their eyes, Ji Tianxing, had already come to Cloud Spirit Palace a few months ago. However, Ji Tianxing was severely injured and on the verge of death. He was lying in a jade coffin and was in a deep sleep. Very few people had seen him before, and no one knew his name. However, today was different. Ji Tianxing and Yunyao walked side by side and entered Cloud Spirit Palace openly. He exuded a noble aura and displayed a heroic demeanor. He was not weaker than any of the princes of the aristocratic families. Not long after, Ji Tianxing and Yunyao entered Cloud Spirit Palace. They sat in the palace and waited. The two of them had just finished half a cup of tea when Master Yun Zhongqi and Mistress Bailey Ningsu, who had heard the news, rushed to Cloud Spirit Palace with their guards and maidservants. When Yun Zhongqi and Bailey Ningsu stepped into the palace, all the guards and maidservants in the palace knelt down and greeted them respectfully. Ji Tianxing and Yunyao also stood up and turned to look at the entrance. Bailey Ningsu was still dressed as usual. She looked about 30 years old and her appearance was very similar to Yunyao's. She was wearing a long dress embroidered with silver stars and a shawl with moon and star stripes. She wore a golden crown that was studded with gems. She looked noble and dignified. Ji Tianxing had seen her before, so his eyes did not linger on her. Instead, he looked at Yun Zhongqi. Yun Zhongqi was tall and straight. He was not burly, but he exuded the domineering aura of a transcendent expert. He wore a golden robe with dragon patterns and a black gold crown. He had a jade belt around his waist and a pair of cloud-ascending boots on his feet. His resolute and thin face was angular. His eyes were like the abyss of the sea, containing the unfathomable aura of a transcendent expert. He looked to be about 40 years old. He had a tuft of beard on his chin. He had the dignified aura of a transcendent, but he also had a scholarly aura. When Yun Zhongqi and Bailey Ningsu entered the palace, Yun Yao bowed and greeted her parents. Greetings, father, mother. Congratulations on completing your cultivation and successfully coming out of seclusion. Ji Tianqing also bowed and said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, Junior Ji Tianqing greets uncle and auntie. Yun Zhongqi stopped and looked at Ji Tianqing with a calm and gentle gaze. Even Bailey Ningsu looked at Ji Tianqing with a much calmer gaze. She no longer had any obvious prejudice against him. Chapter 625. This was the first time Ji Tianqing and Yun Zhongqi had met. Yun Zhongqi sized him up a few times, then nodded slightly in greeting and welcomed him. Then, Yun Zhongqi led Bailey Ningsu through the hall and sat down at the head of the table. After exchanging some pleasantries, Ji Tianqing took out the gifts he had prepared and gave them to Yun Zhongqi and Bailey Ningsu. Bailey Ningsu didn't say anything and her expression didn't change. Yun Zhongqi's reaction was also very calm. He nodded slightly and motioned for the maid beside him to accept the gift. Clearly, they didn't have any expectations for Ji Tianqing's gift and didn't even want to look at it. In their opinion, with Ji Tianqing's status, what kind of treasures could he bring out that would be worthy of their appreciation? Their attitudes were calm and reserved, cold but not lacking in etiquette. They were like the leaders of an ancient family. Ji Tianqing had expected all of this, so he didn't feel awkward at all. After he sat down, Bailey Ningsu ordered the maid beside her to prepare for the banquet. Yun Zhongqi and Ji Tianqing began to chat. He said calmly, Tianqing, although I've just come out of seclusion, I've heard many things about you. In recent months, your name has spread throughout Central Plains and you've been in the limelight. Cultivators from all races are talking about you. Even the younger generation of disciples from Cloud Soul Palace are full of praise for you. Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and said calmly, It's just a title. I've made a fool of myself in front of uncle. Yun Zhongqi smiled and shook his head when he saw that Xuan wasn't arrogant or complacent. People live for nothing but fame, fortune, friendship, and righteousness. Young and outstanding people, who doesn't want to be famous? It's rare for you to be able to obtain such glory and become a household name in Central Plains. There's no need to be humble. Moreover, you're only 18 years old and you're already an overlord. Such a feat is rarely seen in history. Your future is limitless. Although Yun Zhongqi was only praising Ji Tianqing out of politeness, Ji Tianqing's actions were not very surprising. However, ordinary geniuses were not worthy of his attention. It was also a great honor for Ji Tianqing to be praised by a soul-refining expert. Ji Tianqing remained calm and said with a smile, Uncle, you flatter me. The position of the Tianquan region lord is unparalleled in the 9 southern regions. But in this prosperous central state, there are rich and powerful people everywhere. Even the master of a region is not considered a top figure. Ji Tianqing and Yun Zhongqi were exchanging pleasantries when Bailey Ningsu, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke up. She looked down at Ji Tianqing and said indifferently, I heard that you killed Duanmu Yulong, the son of the first wife of the Duanmu clan, in front of everyone in the imperial court. That Duanmu Yulong is the most outstanding descendant of the Duanmu family, the next successor of the family head. You and the Duanmu clan have such a deep blood feud. The Duanmu clan will definitely not let you off. How can the current you talk about having a boundless future? I'm afraid you're in imminent danger, right? Hearing Bailey Ningsu's words, Yun Yao's expression changed and she revealed an anxious expression. She called out in a reproachful tone, Mother. Bailey Ningsu's expression did not change. She just stared at Ji Tianqing, waiting to see how he would respond. Yun Zhongqi raised his brows and patted the back of Bailey Ningsu's hand. He said in a low voice, Ningsu, Tianqing is a guest from afar. Although he did not say the second half of the sentence, it was clear that he was reminding Bailey Ningsu not to embarrass the guest too much. Ji Tianqing was not embarrassed or angry. Instead, he revealed a confident smile and said calmly, In everyone's eyes, the Duanmu clan is a colossus that has been passed down for thousands of years, while I'm just a commoner who has just risen to prominence. Everyone probably thinks that I won't be able to withstand the Duanmu clan's revenge and will definitely be crushed to pieces. However, I don't think that's the case. When I killed Duanmu Yulong, I already knew that the Duanmu clan would seek revenge. If I didn't have the corresponding preparations and confidence, how could I have killed Duanmu Yulong in front of everyone? Yun Zhongqi stared at Ji Tianqing. When he saw that he did not shrink back and was confident and indifferent, He couldn't help but reveal a look of interest. Bailey Ningsu immediately frowned and asked Ji Tianqing, "You want to contend with the Duanmu clan with your strength? You're overestimating your own strength. It's not that I'm looking down on you, but I really can't see that you have any ability to resist the Duanmu clan." Yun Zhongqi immediately waved his hand and interrupted Bailey Ningsu. "Today is the first time this king has met Tianqing. I only invited him to a banquet. Let's not talk about this topic anymore." Bailey Ningsu immediately bowed and said no more. Not long after, the banquet began. More than a dozen young and beautiful maids brought over many delicacies and nectar, and placed them on the table in front of everyone. Although it was called a banquet, it was actually just a small family banquet. There were only Yun Zhongqi and his wife, Ji Tianqing, and Yun Yao. During the banquet, Yun Zhongqi occasionally chatted with Ji Tianqing and asked him about his past with Yun Yao. Bailey Ningsu did not interrupt. She only glanced at Ji Tianqing from time to time, observing his expression and reaction. She probably thought that Ji Tianqing was pretending to be calm and confident, forcing himself not to have stage fright. After an hour, the banquet ended. Yun Zhongqi stood up and looked at Ji Tianqing. He said kindly, "Tianqing, are you interested in admiring the night view of Yunling Palace and taking a walk with me?" Ji Tianqing naturally understood his intention. He smiled and cupped his hands. "Since uncle has invited me, I'm very honored. How could I refuse?" Yun Zhongqi smiled and nodded. He led him out of the main hall and into the palace at the back. Bailey Ningsu said a few words to Yun Yao and sent her away. Then, she also stood up and left the main hall. Yun Zhongqi led Ji Tianqing through many corridors and courtyards. They climbed up a 1,000-feet-tall silver pagoda. At this time, night had already fallen. The night sky was filled with stars, and there was even a bright moon in the sky. The silver pagoda was bathed in the light of the moon and stars. It shone with silver light, looking very dazzling. Ji Tianqing and Yun Zhongqi climbed up to the top of the pagoda. They stood in a corridor facing the sea of clouds, admiring the sea of clouds and the night view. The top of the pagoda was silent. There was no one else besides the two of them. Ji Tianqing turned to look at Yun Zhongqi beside him. He said in a playful tone, "Uncle wants to talk to me alone. Do you have something to teach me?" Yun Zhongqi looked at him with a burning gaze. He said in a low voice, "I don't have to teach you anything. I'm just curious. What kind of plan do you have to fight against the Duanmu family?" Ji Tianqing nodded. He said with a serious expression, "The Duanmu family has been passed down for thousands of years. They have deep roots in Zhongzhou and are very powerful. Even the imperial court has to be wary of them. I can't fight against the Duanmu family alone. There's no doubt about that." Chapter 626. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, Yun Zhongqi frowned and revealed a playful look. "Did Yao Yao tell you all this?" "That's right." Ji Tianqing nodded and said calmly, "However, even if Yao Yao didn't say it, it's not a secret. Everyone knows about it." Yun Zhongqi stared at him and asked in a low voice, "What? Do you mean to say that you want Cloud Soul Palace to protect you?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and said with a smile, "No. It's not Cloud Soul Palace protecting me. It's helping me. The Duanmu family and the Murong family have joined forces to fight against the Yun family. In the past 10 years, their actions have become more and more arrogant and they've been pressuring the Yun family. If I'm not wrong, Uncle must be having a headache. However, even if the three great families have grudges against each other, they can't openly fight. Otherwise, it won't be good for anyone. But I'm different. I've already formed a blood feud with the Duanmu family. I can use all my strength to fight against the Duanmu family. If I can get rid of the Duanmu family, I can save the Yun family from its current predicament. This is definitely the result that you want to see the most. However, there's no free lunch in this world. If the Yun family wants to get out of this predicament, how can we just sit back and watch? So, we can work together to fight against the Duanmu family. If we work together, we'll both benefit, and if we don't, we'll both suffer. I believe that Uncle won't refuse, right?" Ji Tianqing's words were full of confidence and clear. His entire body exuded confidence and certainty. Yun Zhongqi stared at him and suddenly felt an indescribable aura from him. He couldn't help but admire him. Hee, it's just as I expected. You agreed to come to Cloud Soul Palace so easily. It's not as simple as just attending a banquet. You're here to rope in the Yun family and find help. Yun Zhongqi stroked his beard with a smile and nodded slightly in agreement. You're right. I do want to get rid of the Duanmu family as soon as possible and get rid of this #1 enemy. Cloud Soul Palace can't fight against the Duanmu family. Otherwise, it will affect the human race's situation and even the situation of the middle state. However, why should I believe your words? Ji Tianqing answered without hesitation. This is very simple. If I can successfully eradicate the Duanmu family, it will naturally be a good thing for Cloud Soul Palace. If my plan fails, I will be killed by the Duanmu family and Cloud Spirit Palace will not be implicated. No matter what, this will only be beneficial to the Yun family. Yun Zhongqi frowned and weighed the pros and cons for a moment before nodding solemnly and agreeing to this matter. Good. Since that's the case, I'll give you a chance. I'll leave this matter to you. Cloud Spirit Palace can secretly help and support you. As he spoke, Yun Zhongqi took out a dark gold token from his interspatial ring that had 5 colored clouds engraved on it and handed it to Ji Tianqing. This is my token, the Magic Cloud Medallion. If you need any help in the Central Continent, you can bring this Magic Cloud Medallion to the Yun clan. They will definitely do their best to assist you. In addition, if you encounter any life-threatening danger that you cannot resolve, you can also use the Magic Cloud Medallion to send a message. I will save you once. Ji Tianqing held the Magic Cloud Medallion and sized it up for a moment before keeping it in his interspatial ring. He smiled and cupped his hands in respect. Thank you, uncle. Yun Zhongqi put his hands behind his back and looked down at the vast sea of clouds below the tower. He said with a serious expression, although I am willing to believe you and give you a chance to cooperate, you must be careful. However, you must act cautiously and not underestimate the Duanmu clan's power. The Duanmu family is entrenched in the greenwood city of the mango forest and controls almost half of the elixir trade in the Central Continent. They can mobilize countless forces and powerhouses. Ji Tianqing listened attentively. When Yun Zhongqi was done, he nodded solemnly and said, Uncle, don't worry. I will not act recklessly and will not disappoint you. Good, that's good. Yun Zhongqi nodded in satisfaction and waved his sleeves. Then you may leave and rest early. Ji Tianqing bowed to him, turned around, and left the top of the tower. Not long after he left, a door at the end of the corridor opened. Bailey Ningsu, who was wearing a long dress, walked out of the room. She lightly walked to Yun Zhongqi's side and asked with a puzzled expression, Husband, although Ji Tianqing is talented in martial arts, he comes from a humble background and has no power to speak of. How can he fight against the Duanmu family with just his strength? How can you make a hasty decision to cooperate with him just based on a few words of his? Yun Zhongqi continued to stare at the vast sea of clouds. His expression did not change. His eyes were as deep as the starry sky and contained deep wisdom. He calmly said, Ningsu, you met him a few months ago. You should know better than me what he looked like at that time and what his strength is now. If he really comes from a humble background and has no power to back him up, no matter how talented he is, how could he have such a shocking change in just a few months? Bailey Ningsu was stunned. She frowned and said that's right. A few months ago, he was just an ordinary youth. Now, he has become the #1 genius of the human race, the Tianqian region lord. Since ancient times, no one has been able to increase their strength so quickly in such a short period of time. But no matter how much of a genius he is, he needs time to grow. At the very least, he needs to reach the spirit-refining realm to be able to fight against the Duanmu family. How could the Duanmu family give him time to grow? I'm afraid that in less than a month, he will be killed. Since ancient times, it was hard for a humble family to have a noble son. The main reason was that humble families did not have enough resources for their geniuses to cultivate. But there was another important reason. Humble geniuses did not have a strong power to protect them. If they were not careful, they would be killed in the cradle. So, if a humble genius wanted to grow, they would have to rely on a strong power for protection. Otherwise, they would have to keep a low profile to avoid provoking a strong enemy. In Bailey Ningsu's eyes, Ji Tianqing was a humble genius who did not have a strong background and went around causing trouble. He would die soon. Yun Zhongqi shook his head and said, Ningsu, your worries are reasonable. But how could Ji Tianqing not have anything to rely on? If he didn't have an expert behind him or a strong power to support him, how could he have grown so quickly? The monarch emperor is a wise and far-sighted sovereign. How could he let an 18-year-old like him become the overlord of a region? Now that the monarch emperor was mentioned, Bailey Ningsu did not say anything else. She could only nod in agreement. The monarch emperor is a supreme expert who has condensed a primordial spirit Dharma idol. He can see the past, present, and future. Of course, the decisions he makes have deep meaning. Yun Zhongqi continued. Also, I used a secret soul technique to test Ji Tianqing. He is not pretending to be confident. He really has nothing to fear. From his body, I can feel an aura that even I am afraid of. I am very curious. Who is the expert or power behind him? Previously, he caused a huge storm in the imperial court. Soon, will he be able to cause a huge wave in the central state? My Yun family's future son-in-law cannot be a mediocre person. He must be a peerless genius. If he can really create a miracle and eradicate the Duanmu family, then I will recognize him as my Yun family's son-in-law. I will welcome him into the Cloud Soul Palace with a 10-mile-long corridor and 10,000 people. Chapter 627. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stayed at Cloud Soul Palace for the night. The next morning, the two of them bid farewell and returned to the Monarch Palace. Yun Zhongqi had already discussed the cooperation with Ji Tianqing, so he naturally wouldn't ask him to stay. When the sun rose, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were riding on Qianyu, flying through the sky as fast as lightning. The two of them sat side by side on Qianyu's back, intimately leaning against each other as they looked at the sky calmly. Yun Yao was silent for a while before saying, Tianqing, at the banquet last night, don't take what my mother said to heart. Ji Tianqing put his arm around Yun Yao and pulled her into his embrace. He smiled and said, it's fine. Auntie was only speaking the truth. Why would I be angry at her? It's not just her. I'm afraid that other than you and uncle, no one else believes that I can go against the Duanmu family. Yun Yao frowned when Yun Zhongqi was mentioned. She asked curiously, my father brought you to Star Cloud Pagoda last night. Did he talk to you about something? Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, Uncle is indeed a spirit refinement realm expert and the leader of Cloud Soul Palace. He is indeed as you said. He has great foresight and is able to see things that normal people can't. I've already discussed it with Uncle. Cloud Soul Palace is willing to cooperate with me to deal with the Duanmu family. Hearing this, Yun Yao's beautiful face revealed a look of surprise. What? My father actually agreed to cooperate with you? Yun Yao's voice was filled with disbelief, surprise, and relief. She was already satisfied that her parents would look at Ji Tianqing seriously and not embarrass Ji Tianqing when she brought Ji Tianqing back to Cloud Soul Palace. If her father was benevolent and was willing to help Ji Tianqing for her sake, it would be a great surprise for her. But she didn't expect that Ji Tianqing would be able to get her father's approval and even reach an official cooperation. Helping and cooperating were two completely different concepts. One-sided help was almost equivalent to pity and charity. On the other hand, cooperation meant that both parties were on equal footing and working together was mutually beneficial. Yun Yao looked at Ji Tianqing with burning eyes and couldn't help but exclaim, Tianqing, what did you say to my father? He's very shrewd and scheming. He definitely won't agree to work with you just because of me. Of course. Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, Uncle is the patriarch of the Yun family after all, so he has to weigh the pros and cons before making any decision. The Yun family can't directly deal with the Duanmu family, but I have nothing to worry about. The Yun family only needs to support and help me in secret, and they will be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor without being implicated. How could Uncle refuse something that only benefits and no harm? After listening to his explanation, Yun Yao nodded her head. I see. Since my father is willing to cooperate with you, then I'm relieved. Ji Tianqing looked at her with deep affection and said in a deep voice, Yao Yao, not long after I entered the monarch mansion, you told me that the Duanmu family and the Murong family had joined hands to deal with the Yun family and were in a difficult situation. Actually, at that time, I had already made up my mind to help the Yun family eradicate a strong enemy and rescue them from their predicament. So, I had already planned to kill Duanmu Yulong in front of everyone in the arena. The Duanmu family's revenge was also within my expectations. Hearing his words, Yun Yao was stunned. Her heart was full of emotions as she looked at Ji Tianqing with a complicated expression and said, Tianqing, I'm already very grateful that you didn't blame my mother for treating you that way. I didn't expect that you would rather risk your life to help the Yun family. Why did you do this? Ji Tianqing held her hands and said with a serious expression, Everything Auntie did was for your own good. I can understand her feelings and thoughts, so of course I won't blame her. After all, they are your parents, the closest people to you in this world. No matter how they treat me, I won't let you be stuck in the middle. For you, I will become stronger and let them recognize and accept me. Only in this way can we get their blessings when we entrust our lives to each other. Although these words were not a confession, they were more touching than words of love. They were more sincere and sincere. Yunyao's heart was full of emotions and happiness. She couldn't help but snuggle up to Ji Tianqing's shoulder and tightly hugged his neck. The two of them intimately leaned against each other and the atmosphere was warm and beautiful. Qianyu tried her best to maintain a calm flight so as not to disturb the two of them. At the same time, in the monarch mansion, Long Yunxiao, who was dressed in a golden robe, flapped his golden wings and flew over the mountain range like a meteor. Not long after, he arrived in the sky above Yunyao mountain range and landed outside the gate of Yunyao Palace. The guard at the gate immediately recognized him and hurriedly greeted him with a respectful salute. "Greetings to your majesty. May I ask if your majesty is here to look for our eldest miss?" Long Yunxiao nodded and said with a dignified voice, "That's right. This monarch has something to discuss with her." The guard hesitated for a moment before cupping his hands and reporting, "Your majesty, this is really unfortunate. Eldest miss is not in the palace." "Not in the palace? Why did she leave right after returning to the monarch mansion?" Long Yunxiao frowned. The guard respectfully bowed, not daring to nor knowing how to respond. At this moment, a graceful and beautiful figure suddenly appeared in the courtyard behind the gate. It was a pure beauty wearing a colorful dress. Although she was dressed like a female official, it couldn't hide her beautiful appearance and temperament. Without a doubt, this woman was Lan Huixin. When she saw Long Yunxiao at the gate, she immediately froze on the spot and stopped in her tracks. She stared at the handsome and noble Long Yunxiao and revealed a look of surprise. She was so excited that her hands were trembling. "Great! The emperor really came to look for Yunyao. I didn't endure the humiliation of kneeling down and begging for mercy in front of Yunyao in vain. I finally waited for the emperor. My chance has come." Lan Huixin secretly shouted excitedly, and her heartbeat sped up a little. She quickly took a deep breath, calmed her emotions, and walked towards the gate with light steps. Arriving at the door, she wore a perfect smile and looked at Long Yunxiao with tender eyes. She bowed and said, "Greetings, your majesty." Long Yunxiao was about to turn around and leave when he heard Lan Huixin's voice. He turned his head and looked at her. When he saw her appearance, Long Yunxiao was startled and asked with a frown, "It's you. Why are you in Yunyao's palace?" Lan Huixin was secretly delighted and quickly replied, "It's a long story. If your majesty doesn't mind, why don't you come in and have a chat?" Long Yunxiao glanced at her and said expressionlessly, "No need. This emperor is here to look for Yunyao. I don't have time to listen to your story." Lan Huixin was a little disappointed, but her expression didn't change. She quickly said, "Your majesty, Sister Yun is not in the palace. I don't know why she went to Tianqing Palace to look for Prince Tianqing. Sister Yun has been gone for 3 days and 3 nights and hasn't returned yet." Hearing these 2 sentences, Long Yunxiao's body stiffened, and his expression changed slightly. Chapter 628. 3 days and 3 nights. Could it be that they are already living together? Long Yunxiao muttered silently in his heart. His expression was cold and his eyes were a little gloomy. Although he did not see the intimacy between Yunyao and Ji Tianqing, he did not see it. In the past 2 months, he had gradually let go and was trying to forget the obsession in his heart. However, when he suddenly heard that Yunyao and Ji Tianqing were together and hadn't returned for 3 days and 3 nights, his heart still felt very uncomfortable and his chest felt very stifled. After Lan Huixin finished speaking, she secretly observed Long Yunxiao's reaction. When she saw Long Yunxiao's slightly cold expression and gloomy eyes, she was secretly delighted and a trace of a victorious smile flashed across her eyes. "Your Majesty, what's wrong? Are you feeling a little unwell?" Lan Huixin revealed a puzzled and concerned expression. She hurriedly took out a handkerchief with a faint body fragrance and was about to wipe Long Yunxiao's forehead. Although there were no beads of sweat on Long Yunxiao's forehead, Lan Huixin only wanted to use this opportunity to get close to Long Yunxiao. Perhaps she could take advantage of this opportunity to enter. Long Yunxiao came back to his senses and glanced at her indifferently before turning to leave. Lan Huixin was stunned for a moment. Her slender hand holding the handkerchief stopped in mid-air and her expression stiffened. However, she immediately returned to normal and put away the handkerchief. Seeing that the guard guarding the door was staring at her with a strange expression, she snorted coldly and swayed her slender waist as she turned and entered the door. As she walked on the wide and clean road, she was still secretly calculating in her heart. Humph, looking at the emperor's reaction, it's obvious that he still has feelings for Yun Yao. As long as he comes to look for Yun Yao often, I can see him often. Moreover, I will make him more and more disappointed in Yun Yao. Once he has completely given up on Yun Yao, I will be able to find an opportunity to take advantage of the situation. Thinking of this, Lan Huixin's beautiful face revealed a smile. Her heart was filled with anticipation and longing. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. On the evening of the 4th day, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao returned to Zhongzhou City and returned to the emperor's residence. Yun Yao didn't return to her cave residence. Instead, she followed Ji Tianqing to Tianqing Palace. When the two of them returned to Tianqing Palace, Yan and Ji Ku were already waiting for them. Ji Tianqing brought everyone and Qian Yu into his study room to discuss an important matter. I have something to announce to everyone. This time, Yao Yao and I went to Cloud's Soul Palace. We have already reached an agreement with the Yun family, and we will work together to deal with the Duanmu family. Ji Ku and Yan both had shocked expressions on their faces. However, both of them knew that Ji Tianqing must have something important to announce, so they temporarily suppressed the surprise and doubt in their hearts and did not speak. Ji Tianqing said with a solemn expression, I killed Duanmu Yulong and sowed deep hatred with the Duanmu clan. They will definitely retaliate. Previously, I had the protection of the imperial court's prestige, so the Duanmu family didn't dare to act rashly. Now that I'm in the imperial king's residence, the Duanmu family doesn't have a chance to do anything. However, the Duanmu family will definitely not continue to endure. Once they find a chance, they will definitely kill me. This time, I won't sit still and wait for the Duanmu family to come knocking on my door. Ji Ku was stunned for a moment. He frowned and asked, Brother Tianqing, are you going to take the initiative to attack? Ji Tianqing nodded and said, That's right. If I passively defend, no matter how careful I am, it's inevitable that there will be mistakes. Against a colossus like the Duanmu family, any carelessness may cause us to be doomed eternally. Instead of that, I might as well take the initiative to attack and find an opportunity to gradually overthrow the Duanmu family. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and Yan thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. Ji Tianqing looked at Yun Yao and said, Yao Yao, the Yun family and the Duanmu family have been dealing with each other for thousands of years. You should know the Duanmu family's situation very well. Tell us about the Duanmu family's situation so that I can be prepared. Yun Yao nodded and said with a solemn expression, The Duanmu family is entrenched in Xianwood City in the mango forest. That area is rich in all kinds of rare medicinal herbs and is the largest natural medicinal garden in the continent. The Duanmu family is good at refining medicinal pills and has many outstanding alchemy grandmasters in the family. Nearly half of the medicinal pill business in the Middle Continent is controlled by the Duanmu family. Therefore, the wealth and resources accumulated by the Duanmu family in the past 1,000 years have reached an unfathomable level. My father once said that the Duanmu family's wealth and resources are enough to support 3 to 5 soul refinement realm powerhouses. However, the Duanmu family only has 2 known soul refinement realm powerhouses. Hearing up to here, Ji Tianqing raised his brows and asked, The Duanmu family actually has 2 soul refinement realm powerhouses? Yun Yao nodded and said, That's right. The current patriarch, Duanmu Huang, is a soul refinement realm powerhouse. In addition, the Duanmu family has an ancestor who hasn't shown his face for 300 years. He is also a soul refinement realm powerhouse. Above Duanmu Huang, there are several great elders. They are all peak sky origin stage powerhouses. Those great elders are very senior. They don't care about worldly affairs and focus on breaking through to the soul refinement realm. Duanmu Huang has 4 brothers who are all great elders. They are all above the 7th level of sky origin stage. They are in charge of the medicinal pill business in different areas. In the Middle Continent, the Duanmu family has a medicinal shop and a medicinal pill pavilion in every city. They are all guarded by sky origin stage powerhouses. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a while, then said seriously, So, the number of sky origin stage powerhouses that the Duanmu family can mobilize is unimaginable. Yun Yao nodded seriously. Other than the Sky Origin stage powerhouses led by the Duanmu family, there are many first-rate and second-rate forces that depend on the Duanmu family. They are the vassals of the Duanmu family. Those first-rate and second-rate forces are all over the Middle Continent. They are from all kinds of clans. Although they are not a big threat, they are very difficult to deal with. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "No matter the Duanmu family's great elders or their businesses and forces, we can't touch them for now. Yao Yao, tell us more about the younger generation of the Duanmu family." "All right." Yun Yao answered and said, "As I said, Duanmu Huang has 4 brothers. Therefore, there are 4 branches in the Duanmu family. In those 4 branches, there are over a dozen of the younger generation. However, most of them are mediocre. Among them, Duanmu Yulong is the most outstanding one. The person second only to Duanmu Yulong is his half-brother, Duanmu Feiyu." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's eyes lit up. He nodded and said, "All right. Tell us more about this Duanmu Feiyu." Yun Yao thought for a while and said, "Duanmu Feiyu is the son of Duanmu Huang's second wife. He is over 20 years old and has reached the second level of Sky Origin stage. It seems that he wants to join the royal family. However, Duanmu Feiyu is frivolous. He is not sophisticated. He is not as mature as Duanmu Yulong." Chapter 629. After listening to Yun Yao's introduction, Ji Tianqing pondered for a moment and immediately made a decision. With our current strength, it's basically impossible for us to face the Duanmu family head-on. Those elders of the Duanmu family are also old foxes and shouldn't be provoked. In comparison, only the younger generation is easier to deal with. Hearing these words, Yun Yao looked at Ji Tianqing and asked, "Tianqing, you mean to make a move on Duanmu Feiyu?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a straight face, "If we want to deal with the Duanmu family, we have to think of a way to cause internal chaos. With such a large family, I don't believe that their internal structure is as solid as a piece of iron. Wouldn't there be any power struggles and internal strife? Especially since Duanmu Yulong was killed by me, the most outstanding successor to the family head is gone. The most promising successor to the family head position is Duanmu Feiyu, and this person is also a hedonistic son of a rich family. Won't the other young disciples have any complaints? Yao Yao, can you find out where this person lives? I want to personally observe this person. Perhaps I can find an opportunity." Yun Yao frowned and thought for a while before replying, "If I remember correctly, 2 months ago, Duanmu Feiyu kidnapped a princess from a certain tribe and brought her to Central State City. That tribe's princess seems to be an absolute beauty, and is being kept by Duanmu Feiyu in a courtyard in the southern part of the city. Every evening, Duanmu Feiyu would go there to seek pleasure." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and the corners of his mouth hooked into a playful sneer. "Hiding a mistress in a golden house? Since it's like this, then we should personally take a look. A hedonistic son of a rich family like Duanmu Feiyu is definitely easier to deal with. Let's make a move on him first." Ji Tianqing hadn't personally seen Duanmu Feiyu yet, and didn't have a concrete plan for the time being. However, everyone felt that his idea was feasible. Starting with Duanmu Feiyu was not a bad idea. After confirming the initial target, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao discussed and added a few more pieces of information. They decided to start the operation tomorrow afternoon. The night passed quickly. At noon the next day, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao left the monarch mansion after they were ready. The two of them entered Central Continent City, heading towards Clear Water Street in the city's south. The house that Duanmu Feiyu used to hide his mistress was located at the end of Xueqi Street. It was a quiet and secluded residence in the midst of chaos. It was called the Excellence Courtyard. It occupied a large area and was extremely imposing and luxurious. 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao arrived at the superior courtyard and hid in a forest outside the courtyard. Ji Tianqing released his invisible divine sense and enveloped a radius of 400 meters to investigate the situation of the superior courtyard. The entire residence had a radius of 1,000 meters. There weren't any other courtyards or residences in the surroundings. There was only a forest and a small lake. The superior courtyard was protected by a Heaven Origin Grand Formation. On the surface, it looked like no one was moving around, and the courtyard was silent as well. However, the Heaven Origin Grand Formation was extremely profound and complicated. Ordinary formation grandmasters were unable to break it. Even with Ji Tianqing's attainments in the formation Dao, he still spent more than an hour to break open a gap in the Grand Formation. He and Yun Yao passed through the gap in the Grand Formation and silently snuck into the residence. The two of them hid in an empty utility room and secretly used their divine sense to investigate the situation in the courtyard. There were a few Origin Core stage guards at the entrance. There were a few hidden sentries hidden in the courtyard, and all of them had a strength at the 8th or 9th level of the Origin Core stage. However, these guards and hidden sentries were unable to pose a threat to the two of them. The superior courtyard was only a place that Duanmu Feiyu used to hide his mistress. It was impossible for it to have a tight defense, let alone a large number of Heaven Origin stage experts guarding it. There were only 2 Heaven Origin stage experts in the entire residence. One of them had a strength at the 4th level of the Heaven Origin stage. He was a tall and sturdy middle-aged man with a fierce aura. This person was currently leisurely drinking tea and resting in the lobby of the second courtyard, enjoying the service of 2 servant girls. Ji Tianqing was able to discern that this person was most likely Duanmu Feiyu's follower and guard. The other young man, who was at the 2nd level of the Heaven Origin stage, was currently entangled with a beauty in one of the bedrooms of the 3rd courtyard. The young man was around 20 years old. His figure was tall and thin, and his cheeks were white and tender. His lips were red and his teeth were white. It was obvious that he was a young master from a wealthy family. He was precisely Duanmu Yulong's younger brother, the famous second young master of the Duanmu clan in Central State City, Duanmu Feiyu. At this moment, in the spacious and luxurious bedroom, Duanmu Feiyu was hugging a beauty around 18 or 19 years old and rolling around on the large sandalwood bed. Their clothes had been taken off and thrown on the floor. A brocade quilt was wrapped around the two of them. It also covered the soft moans that were making people restless. Ji Tianqing sensed this with his spiritual mind. He couldn't help but frown. His eyes turned a bit weird. Yun Yao saw the weird look on his face, so she asked him with her spiritual mind, "Tianqing, how is it going? Have you found Duanmu Feiyu?" She had just reached the 1st level of the Heaven Origin stage half a month ago. However, her spiritual mind could only sense 100 meters around her. She couldn't see what was going on in the 3rd courtyard. Ji Tianqing stayed silent for a while. Then he said calmly, "Yes, I have found him. I am observing him now." 15 minutes passed without them noticing. At this moment, Duanmu Feiyu finally stopped. He casually put on his robe and leaned against the headboard to rest. The beauty with a delicate body and a pure face hid under the quilt and put on her clothes. Then she stretched out her trembling legs and got off the bed. She combed her messy hair and wiped away the sweat on her forehead. Then she brought over a pot of spirit wine and a plate of spirit fruits to serve Duanmu Feiyu. Duanmu Feiyu held the wine pot and drank with satisfaction. He enjoyed the beauty massaging his legs and shoulders. His face was full of pride. My little beauty. How was my spear technique today? Was it that every spear pierced your heart and made you so intoxicated that you couldn't stop yourself?" The girl named suppressed her shyness. She peeled a grape and fed it to him. Then she nodded her head in response. "Yes, young master is becoming more and more powerful. You come to me every day and you are still so brave. I really can't stand it." Su'er's voice was soft and timid. As she said those words to please Duanmu Feiyu, her pretty face was as red as an apple. Duanmu Feiyu instantly laughed proudly. He reached out and pinched Su'er's pretty face. He said with a smile, "Humph, I've been in a good mood recently. Of course I'm full of energy. Speaking of which, I really have to thank that little bastard Ji Tianqing. If he hadn't killed my eldest brother, how could my extremely talented eldest brother have died in the Yellow Springs? Hee. The Duanmu clan's patriarch position originally belonged to my big brother, who asked him to be so dazzling. But now that he's dead, my Duanmu Feiyu's chance has come. Without my big brother's halo, I'll be the Duanmu clan's most outstanding young genius. My little Su'er, it won't be long before I become the Duanmu clan's patriarch. At that time, I'll marry you and you'll be the noble Duanmu clan's matriarch. How about it? Little beauty, are you happy?" Chapter 630. Duanmu Feiyu had a complacent attitude, as if the large stone that had been pressing down on his heart for many years had finally been removed. In the past many years, he and the other young disciples of the Duanmu family had lived under Duanmu Yulong's shadow. Outsiders and the elders of the Duanmu family could only see Duanmu Yulong's excellence. No matter how hard he worked, no matter how outstanding his performance was, he would always be inferior to Duanmu Yulong. His hard work and achievements were insignificant compared to Duanmu Yulong's. After a long time, Duanmu Feiyu was like the other young disciples, gradually accepting his fate and becoming depressed. Since the next family head was destined to be Duanmu Yulong, why should he work hard? Thus, he became a debauchee, spending his days in wine and women, enjoying himself to his heart's content. And now, Duanmu Yulong was dead. To him, this was simply a surprise that came out of nowhere. Originally, he only planned to be a debauchee young master, enjoying himself to his heart's content. He had no intention of competing for the family head position. But now, he had become a strong candidate for the next family head position. As long as nothing unexpected happened, he would definitely become the next Duanmu family head. How could he not be excited and indescribably surprised? Su-er lowered her head and massaged his legs. Her voice was filled with joy, as if she was overwhelmed by this favor. Congratulations, young master. This servant is naturally happy that young master favors this servant so much. Although her tone was a bit excited and her charming face was filled with pleasant surprise. But in the depths of her eyes, there was a trace of deep disgust and hatred. Duanmu Feiyu did not notice this. He was still leaning against the bed, enjoying the wine and the beauty's service. His eyes narrowed in satisfaction. Humph. So what if Big Brother is outstanding? Didn't he still end up dying at an untimely age? Now that things have come to this, it's actually me who's benefiting. Big Madam is crying and crying at home all day, saying that she wants to take revenge for her son. She's causing so much trouble in the manor. It's really annoying. Central State City is still the best. There's wine and beauties. Duanmu Feiyu's mood was extremely good. He could not help but say many things to Su-er. From his words, he revealed the attitude of someone who was about to become the Duanmu family's patriarch and was about to become a noble and important figure. From time to time, Su-er would respond and flatter Duanmu Feiyu in a soft voice, making him even more pleased with himself and beaming with joy. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. Duanmu Feiyu calculated that it was already Yushur hour, so he asked Su-er to help him put on his robe. After Su-er helped him tidy up his clothes, he hugged Su-er and kissed her. Only then did he reluctantly leave. Little Su-er, it's already 5 in the evening. This young master has to return to Zhenling Pavilion. If he returned late, he would delay his business. Little beauty, have a good rest. Tomorrow, this young master will come and pamper you. Ha ha. Su-er sent Duanmu Feiyu out of the room. She watched his back disappear into the distance and finally let out a sigh of relief. Her flower-like smile quickly disappeared, and her bashful and delicate demeanor was also restrained. She sat in front of her dressing table with a worried expression, silently lost in thought. A trace of sadness and hatred was contained between her brows. Duanmu Feiyu, you despicable and vulgar beast. I really hope you'll be like your big brother and die soon. Otherwise, when will I ever be able to escape from this demon's den? Su-er cursed in a low voice, full of hatred. Her fair and pretty face was somewhat distorted, and her eyes were surging with traces of cold light. It was clear that Su-er had been raised here by Duanmu Feiyu and had to serve him with her beauty every day. There were many twists and turns in her life, as well as many grudges. She used her hands to support her cheeks and sank into deep thought and memories. When she thought of the sad past, tears silently flowed out of her eyes. After an unknown amount of time, Su-er came back to her senses and suddenly saw a figure appear in the bronze mirror in front of her. It was a handsome young man wearing a white robe. His figure was tall and straight, and his temperament was noble. Su-er immediately jumped in fright and subconsciously turned her head to look behind her. She saw that 2 people had unknowingly barged into the room. One of them was the white-robed young man, and beside him was a beautiful woman wearing a white dress. The 2 of them seemed to have appeared out of thin air, and there was no sound at all. Although Su-er was filled with shock, she was still able to maintain her calm and did not let out a panicked scream. She hurriedly raised her sleeve to wipe away the tears on her face, and asked with a vigilant expression, "Who are you? I don't know you, so why have you barged into my room?" The white-robed young man looked at her calmly and said in a gentle tone, "Miss Su-er, there is no need to be afraid. We have no ill intentions." Su-er frowned and stared at the white-robed young man. She asked, "You actually know my name? Who are you?" The white-robed young man revealed a trace of a smile and said in a playful tone, "This one is Ji Tianqing. I'm sure you've heard of my name before." Su Er's body suddenly trembled, and her eyes widened slightly as she stared at Ji Tianqing. Of course, she had heard of Ji Tianqing's name before. She knew that he was a peerless prodigy whose name spread throughout the Central Plains, the Honorable Tianqian Region Lord. Moreover, Duanmu Feiyu had just mentioned this name. Su Er felt a trace of fear in her heart, as well as a strong sense of doubt. She did not understand why Ji Tianqing had suddenly appeared, and why he had quietly barged into her room. However, Su Er quickly calmed down and said expressionlessly, "Young Master Ji is now a prominent figure in the Central Plains. How could I not know? However, I have never met young Master Ji before. Don't you think it's too rude for you to barge into my room?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a playful smile, "Miss Su Er, let's not beat around the bush. Duanmu Feiyu has already left, so you don't have to put on an act anymore. Moreover, you also know that I was the one who killed Duanmu Feiyu's eldest brother, Duanmu Yulong." Su Er frowned, and a strange look flashed through her eyes. She was clearly a bit nervous. "Young Master Ji, you... What do you mean?" Ji Tianqing did not explain, and said with a serious expression, "Miss Su Er, I heard that you are the princess of the southern Mo tribe. Because of the great change in your tribe, you lost your home and were kidnapped by the Duanmu Feiyu. Although you serve the Duanmu Feiyu with a forced smile every day, in reality, you don't want to stay here. You just want to escape from the demon's den as soon as possible. Miss Su Er, am I right?" Hearing his words, Su Er's eyes were a bit evasive. She became more and more flustered and did not know what to do. "Young Master Ji, what do you want to do?" Ji Tianqing revealed a playful smile. "Of course I want to save you. I want to help you escape from the claws of the Duanmu Feiyu." Su Er was stunned. She looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief, and then looked at Yunyao beside him. After a moment of silence she asked, "Why? Why do you want to help me?" Ji Tianqing revealed a confident expression, and said in a low and powerful voice, "There is an ancient saying that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I have a grudge against the Duanmu Feiyu. Miss Su Er, you are also trapped in the demon's den, being played and destroyed by the Duanmu Feiyu." Chapter 631. With Ji Tianqing's current strength, killing the Duanmu Feiyu wouldn't be difficult. However, his goal was to stir up chaos in the Duanmu clan. It wasn't as simple as killing the Duanmu Feiyu. That was why he was patiently persuading Su Er. Su Er wasn't an ordinary girl. She was the princess of a certain southern tribe. She was well-educated, reasonable, and quick-witted. She immediately understood the purpose of Ji Tianqing's visit and guessed his true intentions. If Su Er's guess is correct, young Master Ji wants to use me to deal with the Duanmu Feiyu, and then deal with the Duanmu clan, right? Su Er calmed down and asked in a calm voice, "But I am now deeply loved by the Duanmu Feiyu. I will soon become his wife, and even the Duanmu clan's matriarch in the future. Young Master Ji, why would I give up such riches and glory and join forces with you to deal with the Duanmu Feiyu?" Before Ji Tianqing could speak, Yunyao revealed a wisp of a cold smile and said, "Miss Su Er, you're still probing our attitude even now? The Duanmu Feiyu is a hedonistic young master who commits all sorts of crimes. Countless women have been played and ravaged by him. You are only one of them. In 3 months at most, he will abandon or kill you when he is tired of playing with you. As for marrying you and making you the Duanmu clan's matriarch, those are just flowery words used to make you happy. Even a 3-year-old child wouldn't believe them." Su Er's expression changed again when she heard these words. She was finally certain that the other party had come prepared. He knew the Duanmu Feiyu very well. After a moment of silence, she stared at Ji Tianqing and asked again, "But how can I believe that young Master Ji has the strength to oppose the Duanmu clan? If the plan fails, we will all die without a grave." Ji Tianqing smiled confidently and said in a cold voice, "You don't need to believe me, because you have no choice. There are only 2 paths in front of you. Either you do as I say, and I'll help you escape from Central State and kill Duanmu Feiyu. Otherwise, you will stay here forever, trapped in the claws of the Duanmu Feiyu, until he abandons you or plays you to death." Ji Tianqing looked down at Su Er from above. His tone was firm and confident. His words were very straightforward, but Su Er was unable to defend herself. Indeed, She was like a bird in a cage now, and she didn't have the slightest chance to resist or escape. If she hadn't met Ji Tianxing, her ending would have been miserable. Su pursed her lips and pondered for a long time before she nodded and said, "Since young Master Ji is willing to lend a helping hand, this little girl is endlessly grateful. I can promise you, but I need to know what young Master Ji wants me to do first." Ji Tianxing's expression was calm as he said, "It's very simple. After I let you out, you have to spread the news throughout Central Continent City. What Duanmu Feiyu said to you just now, you have to spread it word for word. You have to make sure that everyone believes it." Su was stunned for a moment. She asked in disbelief, "That's all?" She originally thought that what Ji Tianxing wanted her to do would be extremely difficult and dangerous. However, she didn't expect that it would be as simple as spreading the news. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "That's right, it's just that simple. Of course, if Duanmu Feiyu told you any other secrets, or if he said anything outrageous, you can also add oil to the fire and spread it." Su let out a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She hurriedly nodded and said, "No problem. I'll definitely do as you say. However, there is a mysterious great formation set up in the superior courtyard. There are also many guards and hidden sentries, so the defense is very tight. Duanmu Feiyu even put on the golden moon magical bracelet for me. There is a powerful formation on it, so I can't leave the superior courtyard. Even if I manage to escape, he will be able to quickly find me with the help of the golden moon magical bracelet." After she finished speaking, she slightly lifted the hem of her long skirt and stretched out her right leg. A dark golden bracelet could be seen on her fair and delicate ankle. It emitted a faint golden light and the aura of a formation. Ji Tianxing stared at the golden moon magical bracelet and sized it up. "Then," he confidently said, "the great formation and hidden sentries of the superior courtyard are nothing to me. Otherwise, how would I have been able to sneak into your room? As for the golden moon magical bracelet on your ankle, it is only a heaven origin grade treasure. I can help you break it right now." Hearing these words, Su'er's eyes were filled with joy. She was also somewhat excited. Since young Master Ji's strength and methods are so brilliant, then Su'er can be at ease. Soon after, Ji Tianxing spent an hour to break the formation on the golden moon magical bracelet and personally took it off. Without the golden moon magical bracelet's restraint, Su'er finally regained her freedom. Her mood became even more excited. The sky was already dark and the curtain of night was about to descend. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao brought Su'er out of the room and stealthily made their way outside. Ji Tianxing used his spiritual sense to explore the surroundings. He knew the situation within a radius of 400 meters like the back of his hand. He was able to discover those patrolling guards and hidden sentries in advance. The three of them cleverly avoided those guards and hidden sentries and silently arrived at the corner of the courtyard wall. After Ji Tianxing used his great formation arts to break the great defensive formation, he smoothly brought Yun Yao and Su'er out of the superior courtyard. When it was time to light the lanterns, the three of them left Xueqi Street and entered the Cloud Mist Inn in the city. After the three of them entered the room, Su'er hurriedly knelt in front of Ji Tianxing and bowed to him in thanks. "Many thanks to young Master Ji for saving my life. Su'er will never forget such a great kindness." Ji Tianxing raised his hand and used an invisible force to help her up. He said with a calm expression, "Miss Su'er, if you want to thank me, then do what I told you to do. I know you hate Duanmu Feiyu, but you don't have the strength to kill him for revenge. As long as you can do what I told you to do, he will be consigned to eternal damnation and will die without a doubt." Su'er's eyes surged with hatred and murderous intent. She nodded and said, "Young Master Ji, don't worry. I will do as you say. When I was imprisoned in the superior courtyard, I was filled with despair and humiliation. I thought of suicide many times. However, the reason why I endured the humiliation and lived until today was because I wanted to wait for a chance. I wanted to see that beast Duanmu Feiyu die with my own eyes." Ji Tianxing stared at her. Seeing that her expression and tone were sincere, he nodded and said, "That's right. Evil people must pay the price for their evil deeds. You don't need me to teach you what to do next, do you?" Su'er shook her head and said with a calm voice, "There's no need for young Master Ji to worry about this. Su'er already has a plan and a method. It's getting late. I'll go take care of this matter now. Otherwise, by tomorrow evening, Duanmu Feiyu will discover that I've escaped." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, "All right, Then you can go. Su bowed and said respectfully, "Once again, many thanks for young Master Ji's kindness in saving my life. This little girl will take her leave now." After saying this, Su turned and walked out of the room. She quietly left the cloud mist in. The room quieted down. Yunyao turned her head to look at Ji Tianqing and asked, "Tianqing, you trust her so much that you let her go just like that?" Chapter 632. Ji Tianqing believed that Su wouldn't go back on her word and would definitely do as he instructed. However, he wouldn't completely trust Su and had already made preparations beforehand. When he helped Su break the Golden Moon magical bracelet, he secretly set up a formation imprint on Su's body. That imprint was invisible and only he could sense it. He could use that imprint to detect Su's location. If Su kept her word and did what she promised, that imprint would naturally disappear after a few days. If Su secretly ran away, he could quickly capture her. Ji Tianqing explained to Yunyao and smiled. "In short, you don't have to worry. We just need to wait and see." Only then did Yunyao relax. She nodded and said, "I hope that Su can be of some use. Otherwise, we'll have alerted the enemy." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with certainty, "Even if our first operation doesn't succeed, we can still find another opportunity. Duanmu Feiyu is a hedonistic young master who knows how many crimes he has committed and how many atrocities he has committed. If we use him as a breakthrough point, we'll definitely find a way to deal with him." The two of them chatted for a while before calming down. They both sat cross-legged on the bed and silently meditated to cultivate. The night passed by quickly. On the morning of the second day, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao finished cultivating at almost the same time. The two of them used a secret technique to change their appearances and left the room together. When they reached the main hall of the inn, they saw a group of people gathered at the entrance. Everyone was staring at the wall at the entrance and whispering to each other about something. The two of them looked at each other and walked to the entrance with doubts in their hearts. They raised their heads and looked at the wall outside. They saw a large piece of xian paper stuck to the wall. There were over 1,000 words written on the paper, and they were arranged into more than 10 lines. The second son of the Duanmu family's patriarch, Duanmu Huang, Duanmu Feiyu, is truly a despicable and shameless bastard. He's worse than pigs and dogs. 3 years ago, Duanmu Feiyu took a fancy to the daughter of the Yu family in Central State City. He tried to force her several times but failed, so he plotted against the Yu family. The Yu family was completely exterminated. Only the daughter was left alive, but she was kidnapped by Duanmu Feiyu. After 3 months of torture, she was cruelly killed. 2 years ago, Duanmu Feiyu was responsible for the destruction of Tianfeng Lu in Xiang City and the murder of nearly 1,000 people. The Duanmu Feiyu and Duanmu Feiyus killed Duanmu Feiyu. Duanmu Feiyu tried to buy the Duanmu Feiyu's Duanmu Feiyu and buy the Duanmu Feiyu. In the past 2 years, there had been 3 young ladies who had mysteriously disappeared in the Water Plain City. No one knew if they were dead or alive, and no one knew if they were dead or alive. He was greedy for beauty, so he secretly sent people to kidnap the 3 young ladies and imprison them in the superior courtyard on Xueqi Street. He took turns to play with and ravage them. After a few months, he killed all 3 of them. When Ji Tianqing and Yunyao saw the contents of the paper, a sneer flashed in their eyes. There was no doubt that the 1,000 words on the paper were all about the crimes committed by the Duanmu Feiyu. However, among the dozen or so crimes, the last few were the most important and the most interesting. Over the past 5 years, Duanmu Feiyu has taken advantage of his position to fill his own pockets and wantonly take over the Duanmu family's businesses and resources to squander and enjoy himself. Especially after Duanmu Yulong was killed, Duanmu Feiyu became even more unbridled. He had already secretly seized 16 pill workshops and manors, and their value was immeasurable. After Duanmu Yulong died, Duanmu Feiyu was pleasantly surprised. He spent his days indulging in sensual pleasures and indulging in drunken pleasures. Duanmu Feiyu even thought that he could replace Duanmu Yulong and become the next head of the Duanmu family. He was always complacent and considered himself as the successor of the family. Over 1,000 words were written on the paper, announcing all the evil deeds of the Duanmu Feiyu to the public. Moreover, the words that the Duanmu Feiyu said in the superior courtyard yesterday were also written on the paper. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao both understood that this matter was definitely done by Su. There were more than 30 people surrounding the entrance, and most of them were the common people of Central State City. After everyone finished reading the contents of the paper, they all revealed shocked expressions and discussed with righteous indignation. I really didn't expect that not only was second young Master Duanmu a hedonistic playboy, but he also did so many cruel and evil deeds. The 10 or so tragedies mentioned here all happened in recent years. I didn't expect that they were all done by the Duanmu Feiyu. That's right. With the power of the Duanmu family, wouldn't it be easy for them to exterminate those small families? Too cruel. That bastard Duanmu Feiyu simply isn't human. There were many rumors in the past that said that Duanmu Feiyu had done many outrageous things. His evil deeds aren't limited to just these. Duanmu Feiyu is simply a bastard. His big brother just died not long ago. Not only is he not in a hurry to take revenge for his big brother, he even claps his hands and applauds. He is simply inhumane. This fellow is the second young master of the Duanmu family, yet he actually filled his own pockets and embezzled his family's assets and resources? This kind of person simply deserves to die. I just came from the southern part of the city. I saw that the streets, alleys, restaurants, and tea houses were all pasted with these papers. Many people were discussing this matter. Who pasted these papers? Who has such guts? Could it be that they aren't afraid of death? The people of the Duanmu family are too arrogant and despotic, especially the young masters of Duanmu Feiyu's generation. Each one of them is more vicious than the other. Of course it would arouse the anger of the people. The discussions of the people entered the ears of Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. The two of them looked at each other and then quietly left the crowd. They continued to walk along the main street. 2 hours later, the two of them passed through several streets and alleys. They saw that the streets, restaurants, tea houses, and other places with many people were all pasted with similar posters. Every poster would attract the attention of many people, creating heated discussions. Duanmu Feiyu was also cursed and condemned by many people. In a single night, tens of thousands of posters appeared out of nowhere in Central State City. They were pasted on the streets and alleys, as well as places where people gathered. In just half a day, more than half of Central State City's people were alarmed. Countless people went to look at these posters. They angrily discussed and cursed. Central State City was in an uproar. All kinds of rumors and slanders flew everywhere. The people's complaints were everywhere. Their hatred for the Duanmu family rapidly increased. Duanmu Feiyu also became notorious. He became a demon that countless people hated and loathed. Even though the Duanmu family's people found that the situation was bad, they quickly sent out large amounts of people to tear down these posters in the city. However, there were just too many posters in the city. Even if the Duanmu family's people had 3 heads and 6 arms, they couldn't quickly remove them. In addition, many people had already seen the posters. Through word of mouth, the news had already spread. Chapter 633. When the curtain of night was about to descend, Ji Tianqing found Su Er's hiding place. Last night, Su Er had sent people to post over 60,000 notices in the city. After finishing this matter, she found an old courtyard in the northern part of the city and hid there. Today, Central Continent City was abuzz with activity. She hid in the courtyard the entire day, silently waiting for news. When Ji Tianqing found her, she was first filled with shock and disbelief. However, she quickly calmed down, roughly guessing the reason. I hid so well. How could Ji Tianqing find me so quickly? It seems like he still doesn't trust me enough. He definitely left some kind of imprint on my body. Or perhaps, his influence is extremely great, so he could easily find my tracks. Regardless of the result, it made Su Er feel a bit of restraining fear towards Ji Tianqing's methods. Ji Tianqing saw that her attitude was a bit vigilant and restraining fear, so he went straight to the point. Miss Su Er, you've done very well. Right now, the citizens of the city are all discussing the Duanmu family and the Duanmu Feiyu. You've already fulfilled your promise, so it's not convenient for you to continue staying in Central Continent City. The Duanmu Feiyu will quickly find out that it was you who did it. When the time comes, they will definitely hunt you down and kill you. However, don't worry, I will think of a way to send you out of the city to a safe place. Su Er was also secretly thinking about how to quietly escape Central Continent City. When she heard Ji Tianqing say this, she hurriedly bowed and expressed her thanks. For Su Er to be able to receive young Master Ji's help, I am already endlessly grateful. Now that young Master Ji has helped Su-er like this, Su-er is truly grateful, but I am unable to repay you. Ji Tianqing waved his hand, indicating that she didn't need to say any more. Then, he used a secret technique to change her facial features and appearance. After changing her appearance, Su-er changed into a cotton dress and hairpin. Her entire temperament completely changed. Even those who knew her wouldn't be able to recognize her that easily. After the preparations were complete, Ji Tianqing brought Su-er out of the old courtyard, hurrying towards Central Continent City's northern city gate. The North City Gate was the most deserted of the 4 city gates. There were fewer guards and their defensive power was slightly weaker. Ji Tianqing brought Su-er and successfully passed through the inspection of the city gate guards, leaving Central Continent City. The two of them stopped at the foot of a small mountain outside the city. There was no sign of human habitation within a radius of 10 miles. Under the night sky, the small mountain was silent. Ji Tianqing summoned Qianyu and instructed, Qianyu, escort Miss Su-er out of Central State City. You must escort her to a safe place. Qianyu naturally nodded in agreement. Su-er bowed deeply to Ji Tianqing, then rode Qianyu into the sky and left at lightning speed. Ji Tianqing turned around and returned to Central State City, hurrying towards the Cloud Mist Tavern. 2 hours later, he returned to his room on the 3rd floor of the inn. Yun Yao had already been waiting in the room for a long time. When she saw him return, she hurriedly asked, Tianqing, what's the situation? Ji Tianqing nodded and said, Don't worry, everything has been taken care of. I had Qianyu send Miss Su-er away. Now, we just need to watch the situation develop. I want to see how the Duanmu family will deal with this matter. Yun Yao frowned slightly and said with a bit of worry, Tianqing, will this really work? Although the common people in the city are discussing spiritedly and spreading many rumors, damaging the Duanmu family's reputation, the Duanmu family will definitely suppress the matter. But the Duanmu clan will definitely think of a way to suppress the storm. At most, Duanmu Feiyu will be punished, but he won't suffer too much loss. Ji Tianqing shook his head. He looked at her and said with a certain tone, Yao Yao, the Duanmu family will definitely suppress the rumors and won't let the common people stir up any trouble. However, this time, the Duanmu Feiyu will definitely not have it easy. He wantonly embezzled the Duanmu family's assets. Even if the Duanmu Huang turns a blind eye and doesn't punish him, what about Duanmu Yulong's mother? As the saying goes, a mother's status depends on her son. The first madam relied on her son, Duanmu Yulong, to sit firmly in the position of the Duanmu family's matriarch. Now that Duanmu Yulong is dead, Duanmu Feiyu is happy and wants to replace Duanmu Yulong's position. How can the first madam swallow this anger? Whether it's for her own position or to vent her anger, the first madam will not let the Duanmu Feiyu go. After listening to his analysis, Yun Yao nodded in agreement. Yes, that's true. Actually, it's not just the Duanmu family. All the great families have this kind of problem. In order to fight for power and fame, brothers turn against each other and the madams of each branch scheme against each other. Even the maids and servants have to form cliques and suppress each other. Speaking of this, Yun Yao's tone was a little emotional. It seemed like she was deeply touched. Ji Tianqing looked at her and asked with concern, What's wrong? Could it be that you also have this kind of trouble in Cloud Soul Palace? Yun Yao nodded and said, Cloud Soul Palace is not an immortal's cave abode. Of course, it's not an exception. However, I have always kept a respectful distance from scheming against each other. Those things are handled by my mother. Also, I rarely stay in Cloud Soul Palace. None of the children of the same generation have bad blood with me. At least, no one dares to scheme against me. Ji Tianqing smiled and said in a playful tone, Don't worry. If anyone dares to scheme against you, I will settle the score with them one by one. Yun Yao rolled her eyes at him. Don't bother with these trivial matters. You can't delay your cultivation. Right, what do you plan to do next? Ji Tianqing stopped joking and said seriously, I will continue to stay in the city and observe the situation. At the same time, I will also gather information. As for the next step, I will have to see how the Duanmu family reacts. However, Yao Yao, you have to return to the monarch residence. You can't move with me anymore. After all, you represent Cloud Soul Palace. If your identity is exposed, Cloud Soul Palace will be dragged in. Yun Yao didn't want to leave. She only wanted to fight with him and work together to deal with the Duanmu family. However, What Ji Tianqing said was very reasonable, and it was a very important matter. She pondered silently for a while and could only nod in agreement. All right, then I will return to the monarch residence tonight. However, you have to be careful. No matter what, you have to put your own safety first. If you need any help in gathering information, just tell the Hidden Cloud Pavilion to do it. The Yun family's Hidden Cloud Pavilion is spread throughout the cities of Central State. There are branches in every city. Yun Yao warned Ji Tianqing before quietly leaving the Cloud Mist Inn. After she left, Ji Tianqing sat alone in the room and silently meditated to cultivate. A long night passed. At dawn the next day, Qian Yu finally rushed back to the Cloud Mist Inn and flew into the room. Old Ji, I'm back. I've already followed your orders and sent Miss Xueqi to a safe place. Hearing Qian Yu's voice, Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. Very good. He nodded slightly and said in a low voice, Go back to the 100 Treasures brocade pouch and rest. I want to gather information about the Duanmu family's movements before I decide what to do next. Chapter 634. In the depths of the Mangu Forest. 100 miles to the north of Greenwood City, there was a towering mountain thousands of feet high. The Duanmu family's mansion was located at the peak of the mountain, hidden by the clouds and mist. There were more than a dozen ancient and majestic palaces and rows of exquisite and elegant buildings on the mountain peak. The Greenwood Palace facing the plaza at the peak of the mountain was the Duanmu family's main palace and meeting hall. Every time Duanmu Huang discussed important matters with the elders in attendance, they would hold a meeting in the main hall of the Greenwood Palace. It was early in the morning, and there were more than a dozen Duanmu family experts in the main hall. They were discussing an important matter. Sitting on the main throne in the main hall was a skinny middle-aged man with a goatee. He was the family head, Duanmu Huang. Duanmu Huang was silent, but his face was gloomy and there was a hint of anger between his brows. There were 12 experts standing on both sides of the main hall. They were the Duanmu family's elders and leaders. In addition, there was a handsome young man with red lips and white teeth. He was kneeling in the middle of the main hall. This young man was Duanmu Feiyu. The atmosphere in the main hall was a bit stifling, just like the hazy sky outside. The elders and leaders were silent on the surface, but they were secretly discussing something with their spiritual senses. At this time, Duanmu Huang picked up a notice with over 1,000 words on it from the table in front of him. He waved his hand and threw it at Duanmu Feiyu. Swoosh! The light yellow paper landed in front of Duanmu Feiyu and spread out on the ground. The scarlet words on the paper were clear. Duanmu Huang frowned and slammed the table with a face full of anger. He shouted in a deep voice, You bastard! Look at the stupid things you've done! In one night, tens of thousands of notices appeared out of thin air in Central State City, covering the streets and alleys. Now, all the people in the city are talking about you, and all the powers are rejoicing in your misfortune. Who knows how many people are laughing at our Duanmu family? You unfilial son! Do you want to anger me to death? Duanmu Feiyu was scolded harshly, but he was full of grievances and tried his best to defend himself. Father, how can you believe in this kind of baseless rumor and slander? Our Duanmu clan is a big tree that attracts the wind, attracting the covetous eyes of countless opponents and enemies. Who would have thought that the opponent this time would be so despicable, to actually use such a despicable method that only mortals would use? Before he could finish, Duanmu Huang shouted again, Shut up! You bastard! Don't you know what you've done wrong? Your elder brother was killed by Ji Tianqing, and his corpse hasn't even turned cold yet. You haven't even taken your revenge, yet you're indulging in debauchery outside. Where's your decency? Duanmu Feiyu hurriedly explained, Father, big brother was killed, and I hated that little bastard Ji Tianqing very much. I wished I could cut him into pieces. But didn't you hand this matter over to the elders to handle? I'm weak and can't help, so I can only focus on running the business. It's inevitable that I have to drink and discuss business with others. Duanmu Huang frowned and didn't want to delve into this matter. He asked again, Then how do you explain the matter of you filling your own pockets and embezzling the clan's property? Duanmu Feiyu of course refused to admit it and evaded all the blame. Father, as the second young master of the Duanmu clan, how could I do something like embezzlement and embezzle the clan's property? These were all made up by those despicable people to deliberately slander me and tarnish the Duanmu clan's reputation. How can you believe? Before Duanmu Feiyu could finish, A clear and dignified voice suddenly came from the entrance of the main hall. "Shut up!" Hearing this voice, Duanmu Huang and his son, as well as the elders and managers, all turned to look at the entrance of the main hall. Two graceful silhouettes stepped through the door and walked into the hall. The first to enter the main hall was a woman wearing a long brocade dress with a jade hairpin and a golden crown. She looked like she was in her 30s. She had a beautiful face and a graceful temperament. She had a dignified aura that came from someone who had been in a high position for a long time. She was Duanmu Yulong's birth mother, Duanmu Huang's first wife. Behind the first wife was a tall and beautiful woman in a green robe with a fierce aura. She had the strength of Sky Origin Stage and was the first wife's personal maid, her confidant. The first wife walked into the main hall with a graceful posture. Her exquisitely made-up face was filled with sorrow and pain. She walked to the middle of the main hall and bowed to Duanmu Huang. She said in a sorrowful voice, "Master, Feiyu has gone too far this time. It's too disappointing." Yulong's body is not cold yet, but instead of avenging his brother, he clapped his hands and cheered. "He's even happier than our enemies." As a disciple of the Duanmu clan, he didn't serve the clan loyally and even embezzled the clan's property. This is simply lawless. In the past, you were merciful and forgiving to him, so be it. But this time, no matter what, you can't tolerate him anymore. The first wife's face was as cold as ice. Her voice was cold and dignified. She had the aura of a master's wife. The elders and the people in charge all had different thoughts. After hearing the first wife's words, some people immediately nodded in agreement and asked Duanmu Huang to severely punish Duanmu Feiyu as a warning to others. Duanmu Huang suddenly had a headache. He frowned and said in a deep voice, "Madam, I am discussing this matter with the elders. It's not convenient for you to participate. Quickly leave." Duanmu Feiyu was also filled with anger. He was so angry that the veins on his forehead bulged. He wanted to strangle the first wife. However, in front of Duanmu Huang and the elders, he didn't dare to show any anger or hatred. He could only pray in his heart that his father would chase the first wife away so that she wouldn't stir up trouble here. However, how could the first wife be willing to leave? She looked at Duanmu Huang with disappointment and said in a sorrowful voice, "Master, are you really going to protect Duanmu Feiyu? It's just as the rumors say. After Yulong passed away, you will have to find another successor. I, as the master's wife, will become dispensable. Since that's the case, why don't you just give the order to demote me to a concubine and promote the second wife to the master's wife?" The first wife's tone was truly heartbroken and disappointed. She looked as if she had nothing left to live for. Duanmu Huang immediately frowned and shouted in a deep voice, "Nonsense. This matter hasn't been investigated yet. I am discussing it with the elders. Why are you interfering?" He looked at the first wife's servant and ordered, "Qing Zhu, immediately take the first wife back to her room to rest." However, Qing Zhu was unmoved. The first wife took out a stack of account books and files from her sleeves and said with a cold smile, "Master, I already guessed that you would be kept in the dark by Duanmu Feiyu and believe that he is innocent. Therefore, I have already sent people to investigate the evidence of Duanmu Feiyu embezzling the family's properties. There were 6 books of accounts and files. Every single property that Duanmu Feiyu had embezzled over the past few years was recorded clearly in the books." Chapter 635. When First Madam's voice fell, the entire hall fell silent. Everyone's expression changed as they looked at First Madam with complicated expressions. Duanmu Huang's brows were tightly knitted together as he stared at the account books and files on the table. He didn't reach out to take them. He understood First Madam's personality and methods very well. Since she had boldly barged into the hall and dared to take out the evidence in front of everyone, she must have absolute confidence. He didn't need to look at the account books and files to know that there must be irrefutable evidence. It was obvious that First Madam had seized this opportunity and wouldn't give Duanmu Feiyu a chance to turn the tables. The elders and leaders on both sides of the hall were exchanging glances and secretly communicating with each other through voice transmission. Some of them acted as if this matter didn't concern them and looked on coldly, while others rejoiced in Duanmu Feiyu's misfortune and waited for him to be punished. The leaders who supported Duanmu Feiyu had dark looks in their eyes and didn't dare to plead for leniency or dissuade First Madam. Duanmu Feiyu's face was deathly pale as he glared angrily at First Madam's back. His eyes were burning with rage. First Madam had criticized him in the past, but she had only reprimanded him verbally and hadn't really done anything to him. He had never imagined that First Madam would be serious this time and investigate his crimes so quickly. She wanted to kill him in one move. At this moment, Duanmu Feiyu finally realized what kind of scheming, power, and methods First Madam, as the matriarch of the clan. 10 breaths of time passed, but the hall was still silent. Duanmu Huang had no choice but to express his stance. He picked up the account books and files on the table and flipped through a few pages symbolically. The contents of the records were each more shocking than the last. His expression grew darker and darker until it was as cold as ice. Bang! Duanmu Huang slammed the account books and files on the table and looked angrily at Duanmu Feiyu. He cursed in a low voice. "You unfilial son! You're so disappointing!" His heart was filled with rage, but more than that, he was exasperated at the fact that he had failed to live up to his expectations. He hated Duanmu Feiyu for being unambitious, greedy for pleasure, and committing crimes. Moreover, he was unbearably stupid, without scheming or shrewdness. He didn't even know that he had been schemed against. Duanmu Feiyu didn't dare to quibble anymore. He quickly knelt on the ground and kowtowed, begging for mercy. "Father, I know I was wrong. When I was young and frivolous, I did indeed do many wrong things. However, please give me a chance to turn over a new leaf." "I will definitely turn over a new leaf and turn over a new leaf." Before he could finish, Duanmu Huang interrupted him and ordered in a deep voice with an expressionless face. "Duanmu Feiyu, I can ignore all the crimes you commit outside, including murder and arson. But as my son, you've stuffed your own pockets and embezzled the family's assets and resources. This is an unforgivable crime. I will definitely not protect you. Today, I will punish you according to the family rules. From today onwards, I will take back all the power you have in your hands and remove you from your position. I punish you with 90 lashes and send you to the reflection cliff at the back of the mountain to reflect on your mistakes for a year. In addition, you are not allowed to interfere with the family's businesses for 5 years." After announcing the punishment, Duanmu Huang stared at Duanmu Feiyu and shouted with a dignified expression. "Later, you will go to the punishment hall to receive your punishment. If you dare to complain, the number of lashes will be doubled." Duanmu Huang's punishment for Duanmu Feiyu could not be considered heavy, but neither could it be considered light. 90 lashes, 1 year of reflection, 5 years of not being allowed to interfere with the family's businesses. These were all insignificant punishments. The real punishment that caused Duanmu Feiyu to fall from the clouds to the abyss and lose his power and status was the removal of his position and power. In the past, he was the second young master of the Duanmu family and controlled the businesses of more than 20 cities. He had great wealth and power in his hands and many powerful people under his command. But from today onwards, he could only be an idle young master and obediently stay at home to cultivate. He would never be able to stir up trouble again. After everyone heard Duanmu Huang's punishment, they all revealed complicated expressions. First Madam had achieved her goal, so of course she was satisfied. She bowed to Duanmu Huang and said, "Master is indeed fair and just. Such a decision is enough to convince everyone." After she finished speaking, she bowed to Duanmu Huang and left the main hall with Qing Zhu. Some of the elders and leaders rejoiced in Duanmu Feiyu's misfortune, while others secretly sighed. However, no one dared to oppose Duanmu Huang's decision, and no one pleaded for Duanmu Feiyu. Duanmu Feiyu knelt in the main hall with a pale face. His heart was filled with anger and despair, and his whole body trembled. But what was done could not be undone. He could only suppress his anger and silently stand up. He bowed to Duanmu Huang and left the main hall. 2 hours later, Duanmu Feiyu staggered out of the torture chamber. He was supported by 2 attendants and struggled to walk back to his residence. Just now, he had suffered 90 lashes in the torture chamber. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. The torture chamber used the wind, fire and thunder whip, a heavenly origin-level magic weapon. Every lash of the whip contained the violent and fierce power of wind and thunder. It was like the cutting of a sword, causing people to be in so much pain that they wished they were dead. Even though Duanmu Feiyu was at the heavenly origin level, after 90 lashes, his skin and flesh were lacerated and he was dripping with blood. The pain that seeped into his bone marrow still made him shudder when he thought about it. He limped along the bluestone path. His face was as white as paper and his mind was very weak. He looked very miserable. On the way back to his residence, he was cussing fiercely in his heart. "First Madam, that damned thing. She is too vicious. I didn't expect her to be so vicious. If she hadn't hit me while I was down, how could I have ended up like this? And that bastard who put up notices all over the city to secretly plot against me. Don't let me find out who you are. Otherwise, I will cut you into 8 pieces and burn your bones to ashes." Duanmu Feiyu did not blame Duanmu Huang for making such a decision. He knew that his father, Duanmu Huang, was already doing his best to protect him. This punishment was not excessive. He only hated First Madam for taking the opportunity to make things difficult for him. He hated the person who was plotting against him even more. After a while, Duanmu Feiyu returned to his residence. The maids had already spread out the brocade bedding on the bed and supported him to lie down on the bed to rest. His entire back was badly mutilated. For the next few days, he could only lie down on the bed to recuperate. A middle-aged pharmacist hurried over and hurriedly treated his wounds. He used all kinds of elixirs to help him treat his injuries. After the pharmacist treated his injuries, the pain from his back lessened by a lot. At this time, a tall and sturdy middle-aged man quickly walked into the room. He arrived in front of Duanmu Feiyu and cupped his hands to reporting to second young master, "This subordinate has already found some clues. The person who secretly plotted against you and put up notices all over the city was most likely ordered by the young miss of the superior courtyard." Suddenly hearing this news, Duanmu Feiyu was stunned. Chapter 636. What? She was the one who did it? Duanmu Feiyu clearly didn't expect that the main culprit who caused him to be in such a state was actually Xueqi. Although this news was rather shocking, he felt that it was inconceivable. However, the middle-aged man was his trusted aide named Xueqi. He definitely wouldn't lie about this. A moment later, Duanmu Feiyu came back to his senses. His brows knitted together as he asked with a gloomy expression, "That slut Xueqi was imprisoned in the Excellence Courtyard by me. How could she have ordered others to harm me?" Xueqi shook his head and said in a gloomy voice, "Second young master, the commander guarding the Excellence Courtyard just reported that young Miss Xueqi has already disappeared." "What did you say?" Duanmu Feiyu opened his eyes wide again and cursed angrily. What are those good-for-nothings doing? How could they let Xueqi escape from the Excellence Courtyard? Since that slut Xueqi has already disappeared, why did they only report this now? Xueqi lowered his head and said in a gloomy voice, "Second young master, they followed your orders and didn't dare to approach young Miss Xueqi's loft without permission. Moreover, you went to the Excellence Courtyard the day before yesterday and didn't go there yesterday. The guards guarding the Excellence Courtyard only discovered young Miss Xueqi's disappearance today." Duanmu Feiyu gnashed his teeth in anger. His eyes surged with a cold light as he shouted angrily, "This group of useless good-for-nothings, I will skin them alive. And that slut Xueqi, if she really plotted against me, I will definitely make her wish she was dead. Let's go. Follow me to the Excellence Courtyard." While cursing, Duanmu Feiyu got off the bed and walked out with a murderous aura. Filled with anger, he actually ignored the pain from his injuries and immediately rushed to the Excellence Courtyard. Xueqi hurriedly followed behind him and quickly walked out of the room. Not long after, the two of them left Cyanwood City on their flying spiritual birds. In the evening, Duanmu Feiyu and Xueqi arrived at Central Continent City and returned to the Excellence Courtyard. When Duanmu Feiyu crossed the gate and entered the courtyard, the guards and experts guarding the Excellence Courtyard all hurriedly came to greet him. Seeing those guards, he immediately became furious and cursed, "You bunch of idiots, get out of my way." The guards were so scared that they knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Duanmu Feiyu ignored them for now and brought Xueqi to Xueqi's loft. However, the loft was already empty. Duanmu Feiyu searched both upstairs and downstairs, but there was no sign of Xueqi. Reality proved that Xueqi had indeed escaped from the superior courtyard long ago. Unfortunately, the guards didn't notice any abnormalities, and the superior courtyard's defensive array was also intact. Duanmu Feiyu returned to the courtyard and looked at the guards with eyes as cold as ice, containing a biting cold murderous intent. "You pieces of trash, what's the point of this young master raising you? If it weren't for your stupidity, would I have been harmed like this?" Duanmu Feiyu cursed a few times with a venomous tone, then ordered Xueqi behind him. "This young master doesn't want to see these damned pieces of trash again. Kill them." Following his words, Xueqi's entire body burst forth with cold murderous intent, and he expressionlessly pounced on the guards. Those guards were immediately scared out of their wits. Some wept bitterly and begged for mercy, some fled in horror, and some resisted in despair. However, these guards were only at the origin core stage. How could they block Nie Kuang, who was at the 4th level of Sky Origin stage? Following a series of muffled bangs and screams, several corpses immediately appeared in the courtyard. Several pools of blood and severed limbs were scattered on the ground, and the air was filled with a thick stench of blood. The remaining guards who fled in panic didn't manage to escape from the superior courtyard. After all, the entire courtyard was enveloped by the Sky Origin Great Formation. They simply couldn't escape. The commotion and aftermath of the battle in the courtyard also wouldn't spread. Not long after, Nie Kuang killed all the guards and returned to Duanmu Feiyu's side, his body covered in blood. Second young master, everything has been taken care of. Nie Kuang cupped his hands in salute and reported in a low and cold voice. Duanmu Feiyu didn't pay attention to him. His eyes were gloomy as he looked outside the gate, and the corners of his mouth hooked up into a cold smile. He muttered to himself, that bitch. So what if she escaped from the superior courtyard? Did she really think she could escape from this young master's palm? After he finished speaking, he waved his hands and used a secret technique to sense the aura and location of the Golden Moon magical bracelet. After about half an hour, Duanmu Feiyu found the result of his probing, and immediately revealed a trace of murderous intent. Humph! You actually escaped from Continent Center City? Since you've already chosen a place to bury your bones, this young master will send you to your death. After he finished speaking, Duanmu Feiyu left the superior courtyard with Nie Kuang, and rushed as fast as lightning to the southern city gate. After an hour, the two of them passed through the city gate and left Continent Center City, continuing to fly towards the mountain range in the south. Duanmu Feiyu had just discovered that the aura of the Golden Moon magical bracelet was in a mountain range in the southern suburbs of Continent Center City. The two of them flew for 50 li in the mountain range, and arrived at the peak of a 1,000-zhang-tall mountain. Duanmu Feiyu stood in the sky, looking down at the majestic mountain below, and coldly shouted, "It's here!" He landed on the mountain peak with Nie Kuang, and once again used a secret technique to search for traces of the Golden Moon magical bracelet. After 100 breaths of time, Duanmu Feiyu sensed the exact location of the Golden Moon magical bracelet. It was about 2 li in front of him. He hurriedly rushed over with Nie Kuang. Whoosh! Whoosh! The two of them passed through the forest as fast as lightning, and after flying for 2 li, they arrived at the cliff of the mountain peak. As soon as Duanmu Feiyu flew out of the dense forest, he saw a wide grassland in front of him, and at the end of the grassland was a cliff. At the edge of the cliff where clouds and mist rolled, stood a tall and straight young man, quietly gazing at the sea of clouds. Duanmu Feiyu was immediately stunned. He frowned as he looked at the back of the young man, and a look of astonishment appeared on his face. He clearly sensed that the aura of the Golden Moon magical bracelet was coming from that white-robed young man. However, he didn't recognize that white-robed young man, and he also didn't understand why the Golden Moon magical bracelet wasn't with Xueqi. At this moment, the white-robed young man turned around, and a cold smile appeared on his handsome face. He said in a mocking tone, "Duanmu Feiyu, I've been waiting for you for a long time." Hearing this, Duanmu Feiyu's expression immediately changed, and his eyes flashed with intense vigilance and wariness. "Who are you? Why have you been waiting for this young master?" The cold smile on the white-robed young man's face became even more playful. A golden light flashed in his palm, and a dark golden bracelet appeared. It was none other than the Golden Moon magical bracelet. "Since you still can't guess who I am, then I'll tell you. I am Ji Tianxing." Duanmu Feiyu's expression changed again, and a thick murderous intent appeared in his eyes. "You're Ji Tianxing. The Golden Moon magical bracelet is actually in your hands. Was it you who saved that bitch Xueqi?" Chapter 637. Duanmu Feiyu wasn't an idiot. When he heard the words Ji Tianxing, and saw the Golden Moon magical bracelet in Ji Tianxing's hand, he understood everything. Previously, he was still very doubtful. With Xueqi's strength, it was impossible for her to escape from the superior courtyard. She also didn't have the guts to plot against him. Now, he finally understood that Ji Tianxing was the main culprit. Ji Tianxing admitted it very straightforwardly. He sneered and said, "Hee hee, looks like you're not too stupid." Duanmu Feiyu frowned as he looked at him. His eyes were cold and filled with dense killing intent. Humph, you little bastard. You're really despicable and shameless. You actually used that slut Xueqi to plot against me. Ji Tianxing didn't get angry at all. He said with a mocking sneer, "What's a little trick to deal with a bastard like you who doesn't shrink from any crime? Moreover, killing a bastard like you is also helping the people and helping Tianxing get rid of a scourge." Duanmu Feiyu immediately grinned and sneered with disdain. He. Ji Tianxing, you want to kill me? You're really a toad yawning. What big words. I was just about to send people to deal with you and avenge my big brother. I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to me. You don't know the difference between life and death. If I don't tear you to shreds today, how can I live up to your arrogance? Hearing Duanmu Feiyu's words, Ji Tianxing didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed and said with disdain, "Duanmu Feiyu, the arrogant and ignorant one is you. Even your big brother Duanmu Yulong died under my sword. With your strength, you dare to say that you want to take my life? Are you worthy?" As he spoke, Ji Tianxing's body emitted a strong self-confidence and domineering aura. Duanmu Feiyu's face immediately stiffened and his heart thumped. If he was in the Duanmu clan or in the Central Continent City, he could mobilize dozens of Sky Origin stage cultivators with a single word and easily kill Ji Tianxing. However, he wasn't in the Central Continent City right now. There was only Sky Origin stage 4th layer Xueqi by his side. If they really fought, the situation wouldn't be good. Thinking about this, Duanmu Feiyu's expression became serious and a trace of regret appeared in his heart. Damn it! I was so angered by that slut Xueqi that I lost my head and actually came out of the city so recklessly. Ji Tianxing, that little bastard, not only did he not hide after killing my big brother, he even dared to take the initiative to plot against me. He wants to kill me. What should I do? Duanmu Feiyu was thinking about how to escape, but he didn't look scared. He shouted with a murderous look, "Ji Tianxing, no matter how powerful you are only at the 3rd level of Sky Origin stage. Do you think you can defeat the two of us? Stop dreaming. Prepare to die." While shouting angrily, Duanmu Feiyu took out a dark cyan treasured saber. He unleashed all of his power and slashed at Ji Tianxing. Sky-sweeping waves. The Sky Origin stage dark green treasured saber emitted a dazzling blue light. It condensed into 4 huge saber lights that were 30 meters long and slashed at Ji Tianxing's head. In an instant, the grass within 100 meters was covered by the blue light. The air was filled with bone-chilling coldness. While Duanmu Feiyu was attacking, Xueqi had already held his 2 mountain-splitting axes. He roared with a murderous aura and used his ultimate killing move. He used all his strength. His body expanded to twice its original size. His whole body was emitting a violent murderous aura. Moon-shattering slash. Xueqi waved his black mountain-splitting axes and fiercely slashed out 6 fierce golden axe shadows. Suddenly, Ji Tianxing's figure was covered by the saber lights and axe shadows. He was like a small boat in a huge wave that could capsize at any time. Although Xueqi and Duanmu Feiyu were not as strong as the princes of the imperial residence, they still had the power to split mountains and rivers. They could not be underestimated. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing was shrouded by the saber lights and axe shadows. But he did not panic. He condensed a shield of true ether to protect himself. Then he used his ultimate skill. Golden Slash. A huge golden sword light that was 80 meters long appeared. It carried a terrifying power that could split heaven and earth. It slashed at the saber lights and axe shadows in the sky. Bang! 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 The sword light and the axe shadows collided. There was a deafening sound that resounded in the sky and spread for dozens of miles. Suddenly, the saber lights and axe shadows exploded and turned into thousands of pieces that scattered in all directions. A golden and blue shockwave rippled outwards, engulfing the entire mountain peak. In the blink of an eye, the dense forest on the mountain peak was crushed into powder by the shockwaves. A huge crater with a radius of 100 meters appeared on the ground. The huge golden sword light was still intact. It carried an incomparably violent power and slashed at Xueqi. Bang! Xueqi was sent flying by the sword light. The mountain-splitting axes in his hands also flew out. He was still tumbling in the air when he opened his mouth and spat out blood and screamed in pain. His true ether shield was shattered by the sword light. A huge long and narrow wound appeared on his chest, revealing the white bones inside. Dark red blood gushed out like a tide and sprinkled down from the sky. Duanmu Feiyu had long expected that he and Ye Kuang were no match for Ji Tianxing. They were bound to lose this battle. Therefore, when he was sent flying and saw Ye Kuang heavily injured, he turned and ran without hesitation. Ji Tianxing, you bastard, just you wait. As long as I escape back to Central State City, I will mobilize all the Heaven Origin stage experts to kill you. I will skin you alive and tear out your tendons. Duanmu Feiyu cursed bitterly. He flapped his true ether wings with all his might and flew across the sky like a stream of light, escaping towards Central State City. On the devastated mountain peak, Ji Tianxing was still fighting with Ye Kuang. After Ye Kuang fell to the ground with heavy injuries, he had just climbed up from the ruins when he saw Ji Tianxing use another ultimate skill, releasing flames that covered the sky and earth. Scorching sun fire. Following Ji Tianxing's angry roar, the scarlet flames that covered the sky suddenly condensed into a fireball the size of a palace. The fireball was condensed and floated high in the sky, emitting an incomparably terrifying heat. It was really like a scorching sun. Swoosh! The giant fireball fell from the sky, carrying with it a world-destroying might as it smashed towards Ye Kuang. In that instant, Ye Kuang's eyes widened in shock and fear, his heart filled with despair. The giant fireball had locked onto his aura. No matter where he ran, it would definitely catch up to him. Moreover, he had no chance to escape or dodge. In this moment of life and death, Ye Kuang erupted with a strong will to live and desperately urged his true ether to form a shield. Bang! In the next moment, a huge fireball that was as hot as the sun came crashing down and smashed into him, smashing him into the ruins. An earth-shaking explosion spread out for dozens of miles, fiercely reverberating through the mountains. The entire 10,000-foot-tall mountain peak was blasted apart, collapsing with a loud bang and sending dust into the air. Chapter 638. Ye Kuang was only Duanmu Feiyu's trusted guard, an ordinary cultivator of the 4th level of Sky Origin stage. Even Duanmu Yulong couldn't block Ji Tianxing's attack. How could he survive? When the blazing sun flame shattered the entire mountain, Ye Kuang was also blasted into pieces and burned to ashes. He only managed to withstand 2 moves from Ji Tianxing before he was completely killed. The loud explosion was still echoing. Dust was still flying in the air. The raging fire covered an area of 10 miles and dyed half of the sky red. By this time, Ji Tianxing had left the fire and the ruins. He flapped his golden wings and flew across the sky like a shooting star, chasing after Duanmu Feiyu. Duanmu Feiyu had just flown 10 miles away and was feeling lucky. Luckily, I was prepared. I retreated in time. Otherwise, I would have been killed by Ji Tianxing. Ye Kuang being killed is nothing. I just hope he can stall Ji Tianxing for a while and buy some time for me. As this thought flashed through his mind, a dazzling golden light suddenly flew over his head. Swoosh! That golden light was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it was more than 1,000 meters away from him and stopped in the sky. A tall and straight figure in a white robe appeared. Duanmu Feiyu's face froze and his heart sank to the bottom. Ji Tianxing, that little bastard. How can he be so fast? Where is that trash Ye Kuang? Was he killed by Ji Tianxing? Duanmu Feiyu was terrified. He had no choice but to stop and stare at Ji Tianxing with an ugly face. Ji Tianxing stood in the sky 200 meters away from him. He sneered and said, Duanmu Feiyu, since I have lured you out, I will not let you go back. Don't dream of going back to the city to get reinforcements. Just accept your death obediently. Duanmu Feiyu's brows were tightly knitted. There was some fear in his heart as he shouted, Ji Tianxing, although you killed my big brother, I have no enmity with you. Why do you want to kill me? Ji Tianxing curled his lips and said with a cold smile, No enmity between us? I already have a blood feud with your Duanmu clan, so it's impossible for your Duanmu clan to let me off no matter what. Do you dare to deny that your father did not plan to assassinate me? Moreover, even if there is no enmity between us, I will still kill you. Just treat it as a punishment for evil, and on behalf of Tianxing. Duanmu Feiyu was immediately filled with grief and indignation. She was so angry she almost spat out blood. Ji Tianxing, this place is only 30-something li away from Central State City. If you dare kill me, you will definitely alarm countless experts in the city. By then, when the experts of my Duanmu clan arrive, you will be dead for sure. Ji Tianxing sneered coldly, Ha, ha, Since you still want to be lucky and wait for the experts of your Duanmu clan to come and save you, why don't we give it a try? I will let you know that even if the experts of your Duanmu clan come to save you, it will be useless. Nobody will be able to save you. As he spoke, his body was glowing with golden light. Sword intent shot up to the sky as he was about to launch an attack. Duanmu Feiyu was completely helpless. Her heart was filled with despair. He knew clearly that even if the Sky Origin stage cultivators of Central State City were alerted and came to his rescue, it would still take some time. Whether he could survive until the experts of the Duanmu clan came to his rescue was the key to his survival. However, the answer was obvious. Even Ye Kuang, who was at the 4th level of Sky Origin stage, was killed in 2 moves. How could he survive for long? Thinking of this, Duanmu Feiyu was filled with anxiety and grief. She could only try her best to stall for time and find a way to survive. Ji Tianxing, don't kill me. Stop it. He hurriedly waved his hand and shouted for Ji Tianxing to stop. Enduring the humiliation, he surrendered to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing, I know that the reason why you are doing this is because you want to deal with the Duanmu clan. I have no enmity with you. Even if you kill me, you won't gain anything. As long as you are willing to let me live, I will follow your orders and do as you say. When Ji Tianxing heard Duanmu Feiyu's words, he immediately revealed a cold and disdainful smile. Duanmu Feiyu, don't say such nonsense that is used to coax a 3-year-old child. What a disgrace. If I spare your life, you will immediately gather a large number of experts to deal with me when you return to Central State City. How would you listen to my orders? Duanmu Feiyu's expression changed. He swallowed the second half of his sentence. Ji Tianxing was right. That was exactly what he planned to do. Begging for mercy was only a temporary measure. As long as he returned to Central State City, he would definitely crazily retaliate against Ji Tianxing. Duanmu Feiyu's lie was instantly seen through by Ji Tianxing. He hurriedly explained, Ji Tianxing, I can tell you a secret of the Duanmu clan to show my sincerity in begging for mercy. This information is a core secret of our Duanmu clan. Only a few people know about it. Hearing his words, Ji Tianxing lowered his hands as expected. His eyes indifferently looked at him. Duanmu Feiyu saw that there was hope. Ji Tianxing was indeed interested in this matter, so he thought that there was still room for negotiation. Thus he said in a low and solemn voice, Ji Tianxing, although I don't know which power is backing you, I can tell you this clearly. However, I can clearly tell you that the strength of our Duanmu clan is far beyond your imagination. Our Duanmu clan's strongest expert is not my father, Duanmu Huang. That expert's strength is enough to look down on the profound sky continent. You and your backing definitely cannot afford to offend him. If you know what's good for you, let me go. I can treat it as if nothing happened. Duanmu Feiyu originally thought that Ji Tianxing would seriously consider his words after hearing this. However, he never expected that Ji Tianxing would immediately say with a cold smile, Duanmu Feiyu, since things have reached this point, do you still think that bluffing is of any use? I really overestimated you. Compared to your big brother, Duanmu Yulong, you are simply too lacking. After saying this, Ji Tianxing no longer hesitated. His entire body lit up with a dazzling golden light, bursting with killing intent that soared to the heavens. Metal Emperor Slash. Golden light surged out of his palms. It gathered the metal energy within a radius of 10 miles, forming a giant golden sword that was over 100 meters long. That incomparably huge sword radiance flickered with a dazzling golden light, illuminating the dark sky. It emitted a sharp aura that could tear apart heaven and earth. Dang! Ji Tianxing shouted in a low voice. He controlled the giant golden sword that could split heaven and earth and slash towards Duanmu Feiyu. Duanmu Feiyu was already scared out of his wits. His eyes were wide open, revealing a deep sense of fear. He turned around and ran for his life. However, even if he exploded with his fastest speed, it was impossible for him to escape the slash of the sword radiance. Bang! In the deafening sound, the giant sword that could split heaven and earth slashed him, shattering his vital core shield and soft armor into pieces. Duanmu Feiyu was killed on the spot. A huge wound split open on his chest, and dark red blood gushed out. His corpse fell from the sky and was about to hit the ground below. However, Ji Tianxing had already shot out a giant golden hand and caught his corpse. Chapter 639. Ji Tianqing carried Duanmu Feiyu's corpse and flew across the dark sky as fast as lightning, leaving the southern outskirts mountain range. He did not return to Central State City. Instead, he rode Qianyu and flew southeast as fast as a ray of light. At this time, some sky origin stage experts in Central State City noticed the commotion in the southern outskirts mountain range and hurried over. However, when they entered the southern outskirts mountain range, they could only see collapsed mountains and ruins covered in cracks. They did not know who had fought here. The night passed quickly. At dawn the next day, Ji Tianqing passed through the famous mango forest and entered Greenwood City. At this time, the sky was still dark. The entire Greenwood City was still in a deep sleep and was very quiet. Ji Tianqing crossed Greenwood City and arrived at a mountain peak 100 miles north of the city. He quietly arrived at the peak of the mountain. The Duanmu mansion at the peak of the mountain was shrouded in a thick morning fog, faintly discernible. He did not enter the Duanmu mansion's palace. He hid in the dark and observed for a while. Then, he threw Duanmu Feiyu's corpse on the square in front of the main hall and quietly left. His movements were very fast and stealthy. He avoided several patrolling guards. No one knew what he was doing. Not long after he left, a group of patrolling guards passed by the square and found the corpse. 9 guards in green armor immediately surrounded the blood-soaked corpse when they saw it. When they recognized the corpse as Duanmu Feiyu, they were stunned on the spot. Their faces were full of shock. They did not dare to believe that the noble second young master, who was in high spirits 2 days ago, had turned into a cold corpse today. After the guard captain came back to his senses, he told the guards to look after the corpse and not to touch it. He hurriedly ran into the main hall to report the news. Not long after, the guard captain guarding the Greenwood main hall was alarmed. He hurriedly led a group of guards to the square. Then, the news spread through the Duanmu mansion, waking up countless people. Cries of surprise sounded in the various palaces, breaking the silence of the morning. Half a quarter of an hour later, the guard commander sent people to carry Duanmu Feiyu's body into the main hall. Hundreds of people had already gathered in the square. They were craning their necks to look into the hall, whispering and discussing. Inside the main hall, the Duanmu family's leaders and elders had also arrived. When they saw Duanmu Feiyu's corpse, their faces became as gloomy as ice. Finally, the head of the family, Duanmu Huang, heard the news and rushed to the main hall. Hearing the bad news early in the morning, his mood was naturally irritable. His eyebrows were filled with anger and killing intent. When he saw Duanmu Feiyu's body with his own eyes, his face immediately darkened, and his whole body emitted a terrifying chill and murderous intent. Who can tell me what's going on? Wasn't Feiyu reflecting on his mistakes in the back mountains? Why was he murdered? Where was his body found? Duanmu Huang's voice was filled with murderous intent as he roared in anger. If one looked closely, one could see the murderous intent in his eyes. The guard commander hurriedly took 2 steps forward, clasped his hands and reported, "Master, 15 minutes ago, a group of guards was patrolling the square. They found second young master." After he finished, Duanmu Huang's face turned even darker. The coldness from his whole body became even more intense. Several elders and leaders also began to whisper to each other as they discussed. Second young master was still in the house yesterday morning. How could he be killed today? Second young master was protected by Nye Kuang. He was at the 2nd level of Sky Origin stage. How could he be killed so easily? I wonder where Feiyu was killed. Was it in the house? Greenwood City? Or somewhere else? Who was the one who did this? How could they kill Feiyu at this critical moment? I'm afraid second madam is going to make a scene. Duanmu Huang thought for a while with a gloomy face. Then he ordered in a deep voice, "Men, go to second young master's house. Find out if second young master was in the house last night. Where did he go? Send men to find Nye Kuang. I want to see him if he's alive. I want to see his body if he's dead. Also, keep this secret for now. Don't let it spread out. We can't let second madam know." Even though his son was killed, Duanmu Huang was so angry that he almost broke his teeth. However, he was still able to keep calm. Soon, he figured out the key to this matter. He arranged his men methodically and sent them to investigate. Unfortunately, before he could finish his words, a figure barged into the hall. It was a woman in a long silk dress. She looked elegant and beautiful. She was even younger and prettier than the first madam. She was Duanmu Feiyu's mother, the second madam of Duanmu Huang's family. At this moment, the second madam had just heard the bad news of Duanmu Feiyu's death. Her face was as white as paper, and she looked as if she had lost her soul. She stumbled into the hall, ignoring the presence of Duanmu Huang and the other elders. She threw herself onto Duanmu Feiyu's body and started bawling. "Feiyu, my son, you died so miserably. Which damned bastard actually killed you? Feiyu, wake up and take a look at your mother." The atmosphere in the hall was already cold and stifling. When the second madam's heart-wrenching cries rang out, everyone's hearts tightened and their bodies turned cold. Duanmu Huang looked at the second madam's heartbroken appearance. He wanted to comfort her, but he didn't know what to say. After a moment of silence, he could only say, "Men, bring second madam back to her room to rest." Two maids immediately entered the hall and supported the second madam by her arms. They were about to bring her out of the hall. The second madam cried with tears and snot flowing down her face. She tried her best to shake off the two maids. Her eyes were red as she looked at Duanmu Huang. Her voice was hoarse as she cried, "Master, our son was killed. How can I still rest? Feiyu was my life. Now that he's dead, I don't want to live anymore." Duanmu Huang quickly comforted her. "Madam, calm down. I'm sending people to investigate. I'll definitely get to the bottom of this. No matter who did it, if they dared to kill my son, Duanmu Huang, I'll make sure they die without a burial ground. Madam, don't be too sad. Go back and rest. I'll handle this matter." However, the second madam didn't listen to his comforting words. She sneered as if she had gone crazy. "Get to the bottom of this? What's there to investigate? Who wanted to kill Feiyu? Don't tell me everyone doesn't know? Her son was killed, so she couldn't bear to see me living well. She thought of ways to deal with Feiyu and caused my son's death as well. The first madam's heart is so vicious. She's simply inhumane." As soon as she said that, the entire hall was shocked. Everyone's expression changed. Duanmu Huang's pupils contracted. He quickly shouted, "Shut up! Don't talk nonsense here." The second madam only had one son, Duanmu Feiyu. Now that Duanmu Feiyu was dead, she was already disheartened. She no longer had any scruples. She screamed hysterically, "What? Did I say something wrong?" Ever since Duanmu Yulong died, the first madam has been targeting Feiyu. The day before yesterday, she even took out the evidence of Feiyu's crime and wanted to kill him. This morning, my son Feiyu died. How can there be such a coincidence in this world? If it wasn't her, who else could it be? Chapter 640. The heartbroken second madam was crying and making a fuss in the Greenwood main hall. The pain of losing her son had caused her to lose her rationality and become unreasonable and crazy. Originally, she had been riding on the crest of success during this period of time. She had been favored because of the Duanmu Feiyu's status. Not long after, she would gradually replace the first madam and become the Duanmu family's mistress. However, before she could be happy for a few days, the Duanmu Feiyu had been killed. Although she did not know who the murderer was, she was certain that it was the first madam who did it. After all, the first madam was the most suspicious and had the most reason to kill the Duanmu Feiyu. The second madam was not the only one who thought this. The other elders and leaders also had the same thought. It was just that everyone was muttering and doubting in their hearts, and they didn't dare to say it out loud like second madam. The Duanmu Huang had a headache, but he could not punish the second madam. He could only patiently console her. As the head of the family, he had to deal with things fairly. He could not favor one over the other. However, the second madam was truly turning the world upside down. The Duanmu Huang could only use some methods and use the power of his divine sense to temporarily put her to sleep. The Duanmu Huang had two maids take the second madam away to rest. Only then did the main hall quiet down. Of course, everyone knew that this was only a temporary measure. Since the second madam had caused such a ruckus, she definitely would not let it go. She would definitely fight to the death with the first madam. Not long after, the guard commander quickly returned to the main hall and respectfully reported. Reporting to family head, this subordinate has already gone to the second young master's residence and interrogated the guards and servants. Yesterday, the second young master was not in the residence. He took Xueqi out to handle some matters. It seems that he went to Central State City. The Duanmu Huang frowned and said in a low voice, "This unfilial son." This lord had him go to the reflection cliff and reflect on his mistakes. He actually dared to go to Central State City. Could it be that Fei Yu was killed in Central State City? Why would his corpse appear in the plaza? Even with the Duanmu Huang's wisdom, he could not understand what was going on. After pondering for a moment, Duanmu Huang ordered in a deep voice, "Send an order to Central Continent City. Have the Soul Herding Hall investigate immediately. We must find Nye Kuang." The guard commander cupped his hands and bowed. He turned around and left the hall to carry out his orders. Duanmu Huang continued to give orders, "Second elder, third elder, carry out your plan as soon as possible. You must kill that bastard Ji Tianqing as soon as possible and avenge Yulong. In a short span of 3 months, 2 of my sons were killed. This is a great humiliation to our Duanmu clan. If we don't get rid of our enemies as soon as possible, the other aristocratic families will definitely rejoice in our misfortune." The second elder and the third elder's faces were also filled with indignation. They hurriedly cupped their hands and saluted, indicating that they would definitely complete the task. After Ji Tianqing left Greenwood City, he flew across the sky at lightning speed and crossed the manga forest. Along the way, he looked down at the vast forest from high up in the sky. He saw many dangerous mountains and winding rivers. The forest that was shrouded in clouds and mist was filled with all kinds of strange flowers and fruits, as well as endless amounts of medicinal herbs. This natural herb garden with a radius of 100,000 miles was the biggest reason why the Duanmu clan had prospered for thousands of years. He could not help but think to himself, if there is some way to destroy this mango forest and cut off the Duanmu clan's source of medicinal herbs, it will definitely be a heavy blow to the Duanmu clan. Recently, he had been focusing on dealing with the Duanmu clan. His mind was constantly thinking about how to weaken the Duanmu clan's power. Unknowingly, 6 hours had passed and it was noon. Ji Tianqing was flying above the vast sea of clouds, crossing over a stretch of majestic mountain range. Originally, the sun was shining brightly in the sky, dyeing the white sea of clouds with a layer of golden light. However, at this moment, he realized that there was a huge black cloud high up in the sky, blocking the sunlight. The area within a radius of dozens of miles became dark. Strong winds blew in the sky, blowing the vast sea of clouds and causing them to churn violently. Ji Tianqing could vaguely sense that the air seemed to contain a trace of cold and bloody murderous aura. He immediately frowned and a look of suspicion and wariness flashed across his eyes. Ever since he came to the Central State, he had not interacted with anyone from the Demon Clan. However, based on the experience he had accumulated in the Tianjin region, he could acutely sense that there were Demon Clan powerhouses around him. Even the huge black cloud in the sky was definitely not formed naturally. There was definitely something strange about it. As expected, just as he slowed down his flying speed and looked around, the black cloud in the sky suddenly surged. In the blink of an eye, the surging demon fog condensed into a huge demon face. The demon face had a pair of huge scarlet eyes. It stared down at Ji Tianqing from above, revealing a ferocious and bloodthirsty cold smile. "Kik. Ji Tianqing, I have finally found you." The demon face's huge mouth opened and closed, letting out a deep voice that reverberated in the sky like rolling thunder. Ji Tianqing immediately stopped flying. He stood in the sky and looked up at the demon face. A cold light flashed across his eyes. There is indeed a demon clan powerhouse attacking. When he suddenly saw the demon face in the sky, he instinctively thought that it was the demon emperor. However, after sensing it carefully, he realized that the aura of the huge demon face was not as unfathomable as that of the ancient demon emperor. When he heard what the demon face said, he was sure that it was not the demon emperor but a demon king powerhouse. Ji Tianqing looked at the demon face in the sky calmly without any worry or fear. He said in a low and cold voice, "The remnants of the demon clan are so savage that you dare to come to the Central State?" The demon face opened its huge mouth and sneered in a deep voice, "Humph. In the ancient times, my clan was the ruler of the Tianxian continent. We ruled the world and ruled over hundreds of races. The Central State was originally my clan's territory. It was just that it was invaded by you humans. Why would I dare to come to the Central State? I will kill a lowly worm like you today." Ji Tianqing had heard of some legends from the ancient times and knew that the demon face was telling the truth. However, he was not interested in this question. He sneered with a cold expression, "Cut the crap. Are you avenging the Blood Demon King or working for the ancient demon emperor? Tell me your name." My sword does not kill nameless rats. The demon face opened its mouth and sneered. Ha ha ha. Who does the Blood Demon King think he is? I am the king of the fierce wind tribe. I only follow the orders of His Majesty the Demon Emperor. Ji Tianxing, if you know what's good for you, surrender immediately. Don't wait for me to attack. Otherwise you will suffer. The Demon King of Fierce Wind's tone was full of confidence and arrogance. It was as if victory was in his hands and he already had Ji Tianxing's life in his hands. As his voice fell, the demon cloud that covered the sky spread in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it covered a radius of 10 miles. The demon cloud condensed into a thick black wall of light, forming a huge black ball of light that sealed off the sky within a radius of 10 miles. Chapter 641. The black light barrier was like a huge cage, trapping Ji Tianxing within. Endless demonic aura poured down, filling the entire black light sphere and drowning Ji Tianxing's figure. The demonic aura contained a bone-chilling coldness and a powerful corrosive force. Even though Ji Tianxing's body had been tempered thousands of times, his physical strength and defense were far superior to divine prime experts of the same level. However, after being infected by the demonic aura, he still felt a stabbing pain all over his body, and his skin was corroded black. He quickly channeled his power and condensed a shield with his majestic vital essence to protect his body. However, the vital essence shield could not resist the corrosion of the demonic aura. It was quietly thinning, and its power was rapidly weakening. Ji Tianxing had to constantly consume power to maintain the vital essence shield. Even if the Demon King of Lifeng did not attack, his vital essence would be exhausted after staying in the demonic aura for 2 hours at most. What secret technique is this? How can it be so powerful? He was a little surprised and muttered to himself. At the same time, the Demon King of Liefeng's mocking laughter came from the dark demonic aura behind him. Ha ha ha. Ji Tianxing, I've been watching you for a long time, and I've made ample preparations before attacking. I've carefully prepared the dark cage for you. As long as you're trapped in it, there's no way you can escape. Are you panicking? Are you afraid? Don't worry. I'll let you slowly taste the pain and despair. Obviously, this dark area with a radius of 10 miles was the dark cage that the Demon King of Lifeng had mentioned. This was a divine prime secret technique of the demons. It was extremely troublesome to perform, and it required the blood essence of hundreds of sacrifices, as well as a lot of resources. However, once the dark cage was successfully performed, its power was extremely terrifying. Ji Tianxing suddenly heard the Demon King of Liefeng's voice. He subconsciously turned his head and looked behind him, his eyes sharp as he searched around. However, there was only endless darkness behind him. There was no one at all. Even if he used his spiritual sense to investigate, he could not find the Demon King of Liefeng's body. As such, even if he wanted to resist, there was no way he could do it. Dark cage? I'd like to see how long your meticulously prepared secret technique can trap me. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows, his eyes revealing an unyielding fighting spirit. A cold light flashed in his palm, and a dark sword appeared out of thin air. It was the Black Dragon Sword. 9 Heavens Dragon Soars. Ji Tianxing abruptly unsheathed his sword and slashed out a 40-meter-long cold sword aura, fiercely hacking at the darkness ahead. The giant ice sword lit up with a dazzling sword light, bursting forth with an invincible and terrifying power. It cut through the shroud of the pitch-black demonic fog and slashed into the depths of the darkness. However, this sword slashed through the air and did not cut anything at all. In the blink of an eye, the cold and dazzling sword light was swallowed up by the darkness and disappeared. The dark prison was still intact, and there was no reaction at all. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing immediately frowned, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. How could this be? I slashed down with my sword, but there was no reaction at all? Could this dark prison be a large array? Ji Tianxing vaguely felt that it was impossible to break the dark prison with a powerful sword technique. He quickly released his spiritual sense and carefully probed the surrounding situation, trying to find clues about the dark prison and find clues to crack the array. Unfortunately, he could not find any clues after observing for a while with his spiritual sense, nor could he see how the array was constructed. This result made him even more puzzled, and he thought to himself, no. With my attainments in array Dao, even if I can't crack all of the Tianyuan arrays, I should be able to find clues. At least I can detect the existence of the array and sense the power of the array. The Demon King of Lifeng is also at the Tianyuan stage, and it's impossible for him to set up a soul-level array. If this dark prison is a Tianyuan array, I should be able to find clues. Could it be that this is not a large array? Just as Ji Tianqing was calmly analyzing, the Demon King of Liefeng's sneer came from the darkness behind him. Haha, Ji Tianqing, I know you're good at array Dao and good at cracking large arrays. But you'll never be able to crack my dark prison. How could a despicable human worm like you understand the wonders of my race's secret technique? Hearing the Demon King of Liefeng's confident and proud words, Ji Tianqing was immediately sure that the dark prison was not a large array, but a secret technique of the demon race. Moreover, he had been waiting for the Demon King of Lifeng to speak again. When the Demon King of Liefeng's voice sounded, he had already swung the black dragon sword at lightning speed and slashed at the darkness behind him. Swoosh! A giant golden sword appeared out of thin air, bursting with a power that could destroy everything, and slashed at the darkness 100 meters behind him. However, the darkness was empty, and there was only a large mass of dark demonic fog. The giant golden sword slashed at the mass of dark demonic fog with a muffled bang, and was soon swallowed by the boundless darkness without causing any reaction. No matter how powerful Ji Tianqing's sword technique was, it could not threaten the Demon King of Lifeng. It felt like he had punched cotton with all his strength. The Demon King of Lifeng laughed and said in a mocking and pitying tone, "Ha! You stupid worm. You actually want to take the opportunity to sneak attack me. I've already turned into infinite demonic energy and merged with the dark prison. In this dark prison, I'm the invincible ruler. Your life and death are in my hands." Ji Tianqing's face became gloomier, and the murderous aura in his eyes became more intense. He silently put away the black dragon sword and asked in a low voice, "Demon King of Lifeng, do you dare to fight me fair and square, you coward?" The Demon King of Liefeng's voice sounded in the darkness above his head. "Ji Tianqing, don't try to goad me. It's ridiculous. I don't need to show myself, nor do I need to fight you. I just need to trap you in the prison for 2 hours. After 2 hours, your true Yuan will be exhausted, and you will no longer have the power to resist. At that time, you will be at my mercy." Ji Tianqing silently listened to the Demon King of Liefeng's words, but he was not angry and could still remain calm. He analyzed an important piece of information from the Demon King of Liefeng's words. Given the cruel and bloodthirsty nature of the demon race, if the Demon King of Lifeng wanted to kill me, he would not have said so much nonsense to me. It seems that his goal is not to kill me, but to capture me. Ji Tianqing recalled something. Back in the Sky Pillar sect, when the ancient demon emperor had just broken through the seal, he had said something. The ancient demon emperor had said that the sword god's bloodline in his body was the best sacrifice that could help it quickly recover its vitality. Thinking of this, he could roughly guess the Demon King of Liefeng's goal. Chapter 642. Ji Tianqing had already guessed the Demon King Liefeng's intention. However, he could neither escape from the dark cage nor fight the Demon King Lifeng head-on. Helplessly, he could only fly forward with all his might. He wanted to rush to the edge of the dark cage and find a way to break the barrier. However, after flying for more than 10 miles in the darkness, he still could not reach the edge of the dark cage and return to his original spot. This time, Ji Tianqing was really at his wit's end. He could only circulate his energy to resist the erosion of the demonic qi and try his best to think of a way to escape. The dark cage has a radius of 10 miles. No matter what sword technique I use, I can't break the cage. Since the sword technique is useless, I can only try that magic treasure. Ji Tianqing murmured to himself and immediately took out a square golden seal from his interspatial ring. This was the Domain Lord's golden seal of the Tianqin Domain Lord and a soul-level magic treasure refined by the Emperor himself, the Seal of Mountains and Rivers. Ji Tianqing had never used the Seal of Mountains and Rivers since he obtained it. This time, he wanted to test the power of the Seal of Mountains and Rivers and see if it could help him escape from the Demon King Liefeng's dark cage. Holding the Seal of Mountains and Rivers in his left hand, he waved his right hand with a solemn expression and used a secret technique to control the power of the Seal of Mountains and Rivers. When his right hand shot out beams of true essence into the Seal of Mountains and Rivers, the entire golden seal immediately burst out with a dazzling golden light. Swoosh! The dazzling golden light spread out and formed a 5-meter golden light shield that enveloped Ji Tianqing and protected him. The golden light contained a sacred and powerful power that immediately dispelled the darkness and blocked the erosion of the demonic qi. Ji Tianqing only felt the pressure suddenly reduced and the endless demonic qi in the cage could no longer touch him. At this time, the Demon King Liefeng's voice came from a cloud of demonic qi 100 meters behind him. What kind of treasure is this? The Demon King Liefeng's tone was full of surprise and a trace of fear. Ji Tianqing sneered and shouted in a cold tone, "Of course it's a treasure that will take your life." As his voice fell, his right hand formed a mysterious seal and injected a vast amount of true essence into the seal of mountains and rivers. "Open!" Ji Tianqing suddenly shouted coldly, activating the seal of mountains and rivers to release a dazzling golden light that covered the sky. The dazzling golden light condensed into a huge pillar of light, which blasted fiercely into the darkness behind him. Boom! The 100-meter-long golden pillar of light carried a destructive power as it pierced through the layers of demonic mist and struck the black light barrier at the edge of the cage. An earth-shattering explosion was heard, and it reverberated fiercely in the dark sky. Several huge cracks appeared on the walls of the cage, spreading in all directions. The entire cage of darkness began to tremble violently, as if it was unable to bear the burden and would collapse at any moment. In the dark prison, the demonic qi and black clouds churned violently. The Demon King of Liefeng immediately let out a panicked roar. "How is this possible? You lowly reptile! How could you shake my cage?" Ji Tianqing saw that the power of the seal of mountains and rivers was indeed strong, and his eyes were filled with joy. "When I used the seal of mountains and rivers for the first time, I only used 10% of its power, and it was enough to shake the entire cage of darkness." He did not hesitate to cast the technique again, releasing an even more majestic true origin and injecting it into the seal of mountains and rivers. Suddenly, the seal of mountains and rivers released an even more dazzling golden light, which condensed into an even more terrifying golden pillar of light. Boom! The 200-meter-long golden pillar of light instantly pierced through the boundless darkness, and once again struck the barrier of the cage of darkness. Amidst the deafening noise, a huge hole was blasted open in the black light barrier, and dense cracks appeared. The golden pillar of light passed through the hole and disappeared in the blink of an eye. However, the cracks around the hole were rapidly extending and expanding, causing the entire cage of darkness to be on the verge of collapse. Seeing that the cage of darkness was about to break, the Demon King of Liefeng could no longer maintain his calm and roared furiously. "Bastard! Little bastard, don't even think about escaping from my suppression." The dozens of demonic clouds hidden in the darkness immediately gathered together and condensed into a 100-meter-tall humanoid beast. It was a gigantic beast covered in pitch-black scales. Its limbs were extremely thick and sturdy, and its head was huge. It had a wide and flat mouth, and there were several rows of sharp barbs on its spine. Moreover, it had a huge crocodile-like tail, which was covered in black barbs. This ferocious-looking humanoid beast was the true form of the Demon King of Liefeng. It roared angrily and pounced on Ji Tianqing as fast as lightning, waving its pair of giant claws and smashing down. Its claws were the size of a 2-story building, and the black claws were sharp enough to crush a 1,000-meter-tall mountain. If Ji Tianqing was hit by the huge claws, he would be severely injured even if he did not die. However, Ji Tianqing did not retreat. He looked coldly at the Demon King of Liefeng, and once again activated the power of the seal of mountains and rivers. Dragon Shadow of Mountains and Rivers. The seal of mountains and rivers once again released a dazzling golden light, which condensed into a 300-meter-long golden spear shadow. It erupted with a power that could destroy everything and blasted at the Demon King of Liefeng. The Demon King of Liefeng felt the terrifying power of the golden spear shadow. His body immediately trembled, and his eyes widened in horror. He subconsciously stopped pouncing and wanted to avoid the bombardment of the golden spear shadow. However, he was too close to Ji Tianqing, and the speed of the golden spear shadow was too fast. Everything was too late. Kaboom! A thunderous sound burst out and reverberated violently in the dark cage. The powerful golden spear shadow instantly pierced through the Demon King of Liefeng's huge claws and blasted his thick and sturdy left shoulder that was covered in scales. The Demon King of Liefeng was immediately blasted away and slammed into the dark cage's barrier. Boom! In the dull loud sound, the dark light barrier was smashed and completely collapsed. The golden spear shadow pierced through the Demon King of Liefeng's left shoulder and flew out of the dark cage, disappearing into the sky. The dark cage finally broke into pieces, turning into demonic qi that covered the sky and the earth, spreading out in all directions. The Demon King of Liefeng screamed in pain. Black blood gushed out from his wounds. He fell from the sky and smashed into the dense forest. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing's body flashed. He went through the rolling demonic qi and flew back to the forest. He looked down at the forest and saw the demon king of Lifeng lying miserably in the forest, still struggling. Soul-level magical weapons are indeed powerful. This is my first time using it. I haven't mastered the secret technique yet I can already release such a powerful attack. Not only did I break the dark cage, but I also severely injured the demon king of Lifeng, who is at Sky Origin Stage Level 7. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.